Chapter 885. 2 days later, in front of the exit of another tunnel, Grimm silently observed the flowing dark red light that was transmitted through the light membrane. Vaguely, he could even hear the rumbling of the flowing magma outside the light film. Lord Grimm, we'll have to rely on your protection for this operation. The two Grade 2 fire magi, sent by Molten City, were a pair of siblings. The older brother had a serious expression on his face as he briefly introduced them to Grimm. The younger sister did not say a word, following closely behind her brother. However, from the few times she stole glances at Grimm, it was clear that she had a lively personality and a decent appearance. "All right, we'll act according to the situation." Grimm gave a simple reply and took the lead to step out of the light membrane. The two Grade 2 siblings did not dare to walk directly into the sea of lava like Grimm. Instead, they quickly cast spells, buffing themselves with elemental auras and drinking some potions that could quickly recover their energy. Only then did they carefully step out of the light membrane. If a Grade 1 Magus was a beginner who had just caught a glimpse of the Hall of Truth, then a Grade 2 Magus would be a true believer in the truth. The sea of lava before them was already 300 meters deep. It was impossible for a normal Magus to survive here. Although the two fire wizard siblings could withstand the scorching flames and the high pressure of the lava, they were losing their strength every second. In this aspect, they were not as casual and natural as Grimm. Those who could become fire magi had naturally completed their elemental transformation. Amidst the surging, dark red lava, three almost transparent, flaming figures looked at each other and silently snuck into their predetermined positions. In order to prevent the lava from invading the underground mine of Molten City, countless defensive spell formations have been set up. Unfortunately, many of them have been destroyed by the Grade 3 Flaming Tiger, causing great damage to the interior of the mine. Although the lava in the tunnel had been emptied and the defensive spell formations had been repaired, the entire mine's defensive system was in a mess. It was no longer as united as before. This time, the Rune Master of Molten City had started from there. He had purposely left a seemingly unintentional loophole in the mine's defensive system to lure the Flaming Tiger into the trap. However, such a trap couldn't be too obvious. Therefore, it was unknown whether the Flaming Tiger would take the bait or when it would take the bait. Grimm and the two fire magi's mission was to lie in ambush in the depths of the lava and wait for the Flaming Tiger to fall into the trap before rushing out to block the Flaming Tiger's path of retreat. It was easier said than done. Therefore, the two fire shamans from Molten Fire City followed closely behind Grimm. They were anxious and could not calm down. As Tier 2 fire magi, the siblings were naturally very powerful. After transforming into flaming figures, their concealment methods were also astonishing. However, when they shifted their attention to the Tier 3 mythic ranked fire wizard, they could not help but inwardly praise him. As expected of a mythic ranked fire wizard, both sides were so close, yet they could not sense the slightest bit of difference. Like the flames that could be seen everywhere in the lava, Grimm slowly walked through the dark red lava. If not for the siblings being able to see each other with their naked eyes, they would not have been able to distinguish Grimm from the flames in the background. The three of them quickly traversed the lava, and very quickly, they arrived at their predetermined location. There, a 3-meter-thick, 5-meter-tall, spindle-shaped runestone floated in the lava, moving slowly. Sensing the three's arrival, the runestone's strange inscriptions lit up one after another, flickering with a faint glow. The female fire magus took a step forward and placed her transparent palm on the elemental barrier propped up by the runestone. As she muttered an incantation, the runestone shook slightly, and the outer elemental barrier split open, revealing a small door on the surface of the steel-like boulder. Without any hesitation, the three of them quickly entered the portal. The space inside the runestone was not large to begin with. Now that the three magi had entered, it immediately became somewhat cramped. When the entrance to the runestone closed up, the three of them sat cross-legged inside, barely able to fit inside. However, if the three of them moved a little, they would inevitably bump into each other and have physical contact. The runestone was a part of the alarm system installed by Molten Fire City to detect movements outside the mines. If the flame tiger really wanted to sneak into the mines, it would definitely avoid this place. Therefore, it was safe for the three of them to hide here. In order to avoid any awkwardness, the two fire magi could only close their eyes and rest, silently waiting for news from afar. Grim, on the other hand, kept looking around at the runestone he was in. The inside of the runestone was not empty. Countless strange runes and inscriptions were densely etched on the surrounding rock walls. Grim could clearly see that some of them were energy storage runes, some were energy absorption runes, some were defense runes, and some were alarm runes. Although he did not know much about the mechanism of the runestone, he could understand a lot just by looking at these strange runes. Using a runestone alone as a part of the alarm system was too monotonous and rigid. It would be very difficult to prevent enemies from sneaking in. Therefore, the runestones here were usually guarded by magi. With the tireless power of the runestone and the powerful spiritual force of the guarding magi, it would be extremely difficult for ordinary enemies to sneak in unknowingly. Just like now, Grim could clearly sense that the runes etched on the walls of the runestone were resonating with the two magi. The two complemented each other, and the combination of their aura and abilities gave their spiritual force a qualitative improvement. Grim could not help but ask, "Did you buy this runestone, or did you make it yourself?" The Fire Magi siblings opened their eyes and looked at Grim curiously. In the end, it was the elder brother who spoke. The basic knowledge of the runestone was bought from the Silver Alliance, but the actual manufacturing process was done by Lord Dorian himself. From what I know, most Magi organizations do this. After all, it is impossible to rely on others to build up our own defense system. It's safer to build it ourselves. Grim nodded silently and closed his eyes again. The two siblings looked at each other and could only shrug their shoulders helplessly. Once again, they turned their attention to the detection and scanning of the surrounding lava sea. However, the silence did not last long. The female fire magus suddenly opened her eyes and whispered in pleasant surprise, "There's movement in the mine. That flaming tiger seems to be destroying the walls of the mine." Grim's eyes widened as a pensive look appeared on his face. At this moment, a flaming tiger was frantically destroying the walls of the mine in the outskirts of Molten Fire City. Unlike the rocks in other regions, the walls of the mine did not show any signs of softening or collapsing even though they were soaked in the terrifying lava. The large amount of metal mixed within made the volcanic rocks as hard as steel, but they could withstand the corrosion of high temperatures for a long period of time. Hence, it was extremely difficult to destroy them. However, the flaming tiger did not seem to mind. It stood in the surging magma, waving its huge flaming claws and digging at the rock wall that was as hard as steel with loud bangs. No matter how powerful the Magi of Molten Fire City were, it was impossible for them to protect an entire mine that spanned tens of kilometers with runic spell formations. Hence, the most concentrated runic spell formations were usually concentrated at the weak points of the mine and at the entrance. Today, however, the flaming tiger that had disappeared for a period of time actually did the exact opposite. It did not attempt to enter the mine, but instead chose to dig at the outskirts of the mine that the Magi would not be able to protect. The constant absorption of Eternium essence over the past few days had made the flaming tiger's elemental body slightly different from before. Every time the tiger's sharp claws made of pure flames attacked, not only would they contain a powerful might of flames, they would also bring along a whistling wind, displaying its frightening physical attack power. With a swipe of its claws, a pit that was half a meter deep appeared on the wall that was harder than steel. At the bottom of the pit were terrifying cracks that were as dense as a spider's web. The flaming tiger's claws dug without stopping, and in the blink of an eye, it had dug out a huge pit that was 7 to 8 meters deep. With this speed, it would not take more than half a day for the flaming tiger to dig through more than 30 meters of the wall and directly into the tunnel of the mine. This scene was obviously out of the expectations of the higher-ups of Molten Fire City, and the few Tier 3 Magi who were hiding behind the scenes could no longer sit still. With a violent wave of magic, 2 Tier 3 Magi simultaneously appeared in the sea of lava. Unlike Grimm, who had transformed into a fire elemental form and was one with the sea of lava, these 2 Tier 3 Magi were obviously not suited to battle in the sea of lava. However, the current situation was a little different from before. The Flaming Tiger did not step into the trap of the spell formation, so the 2 Magi could only hold back their hatred and attack, hoping that they could lure it into the trap. That Kirik and Wizard Dorian stood on a huge rolling stone ball. They pushed aside the obstructing magma and angrily rushed towards the Flaming Tiger. Both sides immediately started a fight to the death outside the mine. However, although it was a fight, the 2 Magi were actually just defending, trying their best to nullify the Flaming Tiger's endless attacks. In the sea of lava, the Flaming Tiger's battle power was simply astonishing. Chapter 886. As a rank 3 wizard, how could he not retaliate when he was being attacked? Wizard Kalak waved his hand, and a huge ball of venom shot out towards the Flaming Tiger, who was frantically digging for the stone orb. The Flaming Tiger roared and leaped, disappearing from where it stood. When it reappeared, it was already on the other side of the stone orb and continued to attack. The dark green venom ball missed its target and instantly exploded in the sea of lava, dyeing the dark red lava within 100 meters black. If this was on land, all the plants and creatures within 100 meters would have been poisoned to death. Even small bacteria would have a hard time surviving inside. Unfortunately, they were currently in the depths of the sea of lava, which was 300 meters deep. Although the venom was powerful, it was severely restricted by the harsh environment. The lethal poison ring, which was supposed to last for half a month, didn't even last for 10 fingers under the terrifying lava's erosion before it completely disappeared. The poisonous cloud formed by the evaporation of the venom could not spread any further, so it also disappeared. Wizard Dorian, who was inside the stone orb, raised his magic staff high and pointed at the Flaming Tiger. Every time he pointed his magic staff, a dense rune-light circle would form under the Flaming Tiger's body. Unfortunately, before the rune-light circle could completely bind the Flaming Tiger, the rank 3 Flaming Tiger had already dodged it with brute force and agility. Wizard Dorian became ruthless. The tip of his magic staff flashed, and various rune circles with different functions flew towards the Flaming Tiger like a lasso. As long as the opponent could not dodge it, the dense rune circles would firmly bind them in place. This created the best opportunity for Wizard Kylak to attack with his poison. Unfortunately, not only was the Flaming Tiger extremely cunning, it was also extremely sensitive to energy fluctuations. As long as there was a slight abnormality in the magic elements around it, it would quickly change its position, not giving the enemy the chance to bind it. The 2 rank 3 wizards were barely able to chase after the Flaming Tiger, but it was very difficult to penetrate through the flowing lava and instantly hit its body. The 3 of them fought as they moved through the sea of lava, constantly changing their positions and turning the place into a chaotic lava storm. The area where they were fighting was 5 miles away from Grimm's runestone, so it was very difficult for Grimm and the others to grasp the actual situation on the battlefield. They could only get a rough idea of the battle through the simple messages sent by the 2 rank 3 wizards. On the battlefield, Kalak and Dorian, who were hiding in the transparent stone orb, were almost going crazy. That Flaming Tiger was unexpectedly cunning and cunning. If the 2 wizards went forward to fight it, it would pounce on them and fight them. If the 2 wizards fought while retreating, trying to lure it into a trap not far away, it would leave and continue digging at the walls of the mine. After a few times, the 2 wizards could still hold on, but the stone orb that they were hiding in could no longer. After all, one of them was a venom magician, while the other was a rune formation master. Neither of them belonged to the earth element, so they summoned the transparent stone ball with a piece of sorcery equipment. Once the stone ball was broken, they would lose their protective magic tools and could only fight with the flaming tiger while pushing the magma away. If that happened, they would be in an even worse situation. If the battlefield was moved to the surface, the two higher-ups of Molten City would not have any stage fright. But in such a harsh environment, it was difficult for their own witchcraft to be used to its fullest. Therefore, no matter how hard the two rank 3 wizards racked their brains, they could not suppress the hateful rank 3 flaming tiger in such a terrible environment. Finally, Kalak sent a message to Grimm to join the battle. Inside the runestone, the two fire wizards of Molten City opened their eyes at the same time and whispered to Grimm, Lord Kalak has requested for you to join the battle. Grimm pretended to be surprised and said, This seems to be different from the original plan, right? The trap has not been opened yet. If I join the battle rashly, I might scare the flaming tiger away. The older brother smiled bitterly and said, Lord Kalak has already said that the plan cannot be carried out. We can only chase the flaming tiger away first. We'll find a chance to discuss how to fight later. At this point, Grimm could no longer refuse. He immediately turned into a ball of flame and came out from the gap of the runestone. He quickly rushed towards the battlefield. For a Tier 3 sorcerer, a distance of 5 kilometers was but a dozen or so miles. The flaming tiger, who was fighting with the two wizards, suddenly stopped and raised its head. Its eyes were like torches as it stared at the depths of the lava sea, as if it had sensed a great enemy approaching. The two rank 3 wizards already knew what was going on, so they did not want to let the flaming tiger go. They both took out powerful spells to keep the flaming tiger busy. The transparent stone ball trembled violently for a while and finally collapsed. The magic ring on Wizard Kalak's right pinky suddenly exploded, and a chaotic flow of energy surged. Obviously, it had been severely damaged. After destroying a rank 3 wizard item, Wizard Kalak's mood immediately became extremely gloomy. He let out a low roar and used his poisonous aura to defend against the lava that suddenly surrounded him. At the same time, he slowly reached out his right hand towards the flaming tiger. Whoosh! Suddenly, a big green hand appeared between Kalak and the flaming tiger, viciously grabbing towards the flaming tiger. Help me hold it down. Hearing Kalak's quick transmission, Dorian, who was standing in a transparent, 3-dimensional rune circle, also clenched his teeth. He pulled out a lion tooth pendant from his neck and threw it towards the flaming tiger. The lion tooth pendant flew halfway and suddenly exploded into a sky full of bone fragments. It turned into a rapid wave that swept across a huge space of 100 meters. Naturally, the flaming tiger was within it. In the next second, a strange quicksand trap suddenly appeared under the flaming tiger's body. Without giving the flaming tiger any time to struggle, the flaming tiger's huge body sunk into the ground. At this moment, Kalak's big green hand also whistled and grabbed towards the flaming tiger, perfectly coordinating with the quicksand trap. Being attacked from both sides, the rank 3 flaming tiger was extremely furious. As it struggled with all its might, the quicksand trap flashed with a red light, allowing it to break free from 2 tiger claws. The flaming tiger held onto the edge of the trap, raised its head, and let out a deafening roar towards the big green hand that was grabbing towards it. A layer of golden flames emerged from its body, firmly blocking the big hand. The flames and the poisonous hand collided, producing a strange, sizzling sound. Merciless Hand was rapidly melting, and the golden flames had turned into a glossy green. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Just as the flaming tiger and the 2 rank 3 magi were locked in a stalemate, the sea of lava behind the flaming tiger parted, and an almost transparent flaming figure appeared. With a raise of its hands, a strange long whip with surging flames coiled around the flaming tiger's body. The flaming tiger was originally a flaming creature, so it was naturally impossible for it to be injured by flames. However, the flaming whip had firmly bound it to the ground, and it no longer had the agility it had before. Good, Seeing that Grimm's first move was successful, Kalak shouted excitedly. He and Wizard Dorian immediately flew towards the flaming tiger's side, planning to cooperate with Grimm to capture the flaming tiger in one fell swoop. Not far away, the figure of the sealer Yonid also appeared, rushing towards them quickly. However, at this moment, Grimm, who was trying his best to bind the flaming tiger, suddenly had a change in expression. He quickly transmitted a message to the others. Quick, dodge. With that, Grimm had already abandoned the flaming whip and suddenly turned into a ball of flames, disappearing on the spot. How? After all, Kalak and Dorian did not have any tacit understanding with Grimm, so when they suddenly heard his transmission, they could not help but be stunned for a moment. And this pause was enough to make them suffer a great deal. Inexplicably, the flaming tiger's body suddenly exploded with a tyrannical aura. Then, a 10-meter-tall lava giant suddenly appeared. With a loud roar, a wild and ferocious giant fist smashed towards the two of them. Rank 3. Another Rank 3 Magus. Where did it come from? Countless thoughts appeared in the minds of the two higher-ups of Molten City, but they could not find an answer, even after much thought. Faced with the almost berserk lava giant, Kalak and Dorian, who had extremely weak bodies, did not dare to take its violent attack head-on, and began to retreat with all their might. However, the lava giant's stone fist had already rapidly passed through the flowing lava, sending a terrifying force to the two magi. With one punch, the shields of the two magi were almost broken by half. With two punches, the two magi staggered backwards, their faces filled with horror. With 3 punches, the two magi simultaneously healed. Just as the 4th punch was about to land, the two magi would inevitably suffer some physical damage. Grimm suddenly appeared beside them, grabbed them, and instantly teleported away. However, no matter how fast his flame leap was, the shockwaves from the lava giant's punch quickly caught up to them, causing the 3 of them to be thrown far away in a turbulent torrent. The lava giant, which had unleashed such terrifying power in one breath, rapidly collapsed after a few punches, once again disintegrating into a chaotic and ruthless elemental aura. Soul projection. Damn it, it's an elemental talisman. Sealer Yunid's shrill and hoarse voice suddenly sounded from the periphery of the battlefield. She had witnessed the entire process and could clearly see that the terrifying lava giant was not a true elemental entity, but a soul projection formed by an elemental talisman. The entire soul projection had such great power, and after venting it in one breath, it collapsed on its own. However, even though it was only an illusory projection, the explosive power it possessed in that short instant caused the expressions of the few Rank 3 magi to change drastically. Chapter 887. The opponent had actually used a rare grade item. This unexpected reality shocked the few magi present to the point where they could hardly contain themselves. Since a long time ago, being equipped with alchemy items, equipped with powerful magic tools, and using a large number of magic tools had become the greatest distinguishing feature of human magi compared to other intelligent races. In terms of strength, human magi could not compare to ogres. In terms of physique, human magi could not compare to most ferocious magical beasts. In terms of agility, human magi could not compare to feyed elves. In terms of spiritual force, human magi could not compare to natural mutants. However, human magi had managed to suppress these ferocious magical beasts, natural mutants, and powerful intelligent races, becoming fearsome rulers above them. What did they rely on? They relied on a large number of alchemy items, magic tools, as well as a strong ability to mobilize people. In the eyes of magi, most elemental creatures refused to use alchemy items. This was due to their personal preferences, but it was also related to the fact that elemental creatures lacked a comprehensive system of alchemy. Some high-ranked and intelligent elemental creatures might look for some natural magic gems to act as support tools in battle, but it was rare to see a large number of man-made extraordinary grade items. Just now, the flame tiger had used a magical tool from the lava giant tribe to unleash a violent attack at the last moment. This was something that the Magi found hard to understand. However, no matter how hard it was to understand, what had already happened. They could only choose to accept it. The two Magi who had escaped with Grimm's help nodded to him in thanks. In truth, the rank 3 Flame Tiger's attack could not have caused much damage to them. After all, elemental damage could be reduced or nullified through various methods, but pure physical attacks could not be nullified, unless the two Magi had prepared a spirit scepter or a similar spell that could allow them to temporarily turn incorporeal to avoid physical attacks. If not, they would have to bear the full brunt of the lava giant's attack. From the strength of the lava giant's attack, it could be seen that if the two Magi had not dodged it, they would have needed at least a month or two to repair their damaged bodies. At their level, their extremely high vitality made it very difficult for irreversible damage to occur to their bodies. However, if it did, the consequences would be very serious. One had to know that the body of a rank 3 sorcerer was often tempered by the sorcerer's spiritual waves day and night to form a compatible physique. Once a part of the body was reborn or a wizard spell was transplanted, a huge amount of time and resources would be needed to readjust it to a level that was most compatible with one's soul attribute and spiritual undulations. In this period of time, the battle prowess of the injured Magi would inevitably decline. Therefore, Cadillac and Dorian had a good impression of Grimm's righteous act, and the relationship between the three of them was much closer than before. The failure of their first hunt left the Magi feeling a little dejected. After a simple greeting, they all returned to Molten City. Deep within the lava sea, Sindar's lair, Flaming Tiger roared furiously. "Damn it! What is your main body trying to do? Wasn't it supposed to be a fake fight? Why did you create such a huge commotion? You almost caused me to fall into the hands of a human magus." Sindar's originally dark red body of flames was now covered with dense dark spots. At this moment, it was expanding and extending crazily. From afar, they looked like abscesses growing on an animal's body. They were densely packed, increasing in number and size. As the dark spots spread out, the flames that were constantly swirling around Sindar's body were eroded to the point that they were dim and seemed to be on the verge of being extinguished. For the first time in his life, Sindar was sick, appearing weak and listless. This was a type of poison, a terrifying poison that could even corrode magic flames. The flaming clone stood silently, its body surging with crimson flames that were almost liquid. It seemed to not have noticed Flaming Tiger's condition. "Lord Sindar, you performed well today. Under such circumstances, those Magi probably don't think that you have the ability to invade the underground mine in the short term." "Damn it, what am I saying to you? Don't you understand?" The calm attitude of the flaming clone enraged Flaming Tiger once again. "Just now, the other you almost caused my death. I need you to give me an explanation now, or else." Flaming Tiger took a few steps forward, baring its fangs at the flaming clone's body. "Lord Sindar, I think, as allies, we should have some basic trust between us. Before you let your anger get to your head, shouldn't you take a look at what's under you?" "What under me?" Flaming Tiger Sindar was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and was surprised to find that the floor of the lair he had dug out had been etched with a complicated and exquisite spell formation. However, there were a few grooves where the magic nodes and magic circuits were located that had not been inlaid with magic crystals and had yet to be activated, which was why it did not attract his attention. "What is this? What did you do to my lair while I was away?" Although Sindar, the Flaming Tiger, had lived for many years longer than Grimm, he was clearly not proficient in these strange and unpredictable high-level occult contents. Therefore, he could only stare at the flame doppelganger with his huge, bronze bell-like flaming eyes. Sindar secretly swore to himself that if he sensed any signs of danger, he would attack mercilessly, not giving the enemy a chance to plot against him. This is a spirit-gathering spell formation. It's also the basic component for most spell formations to operate. The face of the flaming clone once again transformed into Grimm's face. If you want your injuries to heal quickly, with the help of this spirit-gathering spell formation, it will be 10 times faster. Sindar lowered his head and sniffed a few times on the spell formation. Although he did not understand such fine and subtle things, as a high-grade flame creature, he had an intuition for danger that other life forms could not hope to achieve. In the crisscrossing spell formation that was filled with strange and mysterious runes, he did not sense any smell of danger. On the contrary, this spell formation gave him a strange feeling of tranquility and intoxication. Activated. I'm warning you, don't do anything behind my back. The flaming clone opened his mouth and spat out a storage ring. He poured out a pile of magic crystals and carefully embedded them into the nodes of the spirit-gathering spell formation. As magical energy flowed and connected in the nodes, the runes that were immersed in mysterious power lit up, forming a small spell formation that covered the entire nest. When the spell formation was activated and started operating, the massive amount of fire elements that were scattered in the surroundings rushed in like rivers returning to the sea. In an instant, the concentration of fire elements in the nest increased by more than 10 times. With the operation of the spell formation, more and more fire elements gathered, and there were even dark red, smoke-like flames appearing inside the nest. Flaming Tiger Sindar tried to breathe. The dense and pure fire element particles had already begun to transform into flame energy, and it was much easier to absorb them than the free fire elements in the space. Sindar could absorb fire elements like this even without the spirit-gathering spell formation. However, it was purely relying on its own elemental instincts, and it was far less efficient than the spirit-gathering spell formation. Sindar estimated that the effect of absorbing fire elements in this spirit-gathering spell formation was 20 to 30 times faster than the accumulation of his innate abilities. This also meant that if he slept here for a day, he would be able to accumulate as much as a month's worth of energy. Sindar did not have the habit of pretending to be polite. Once he realized that it was beneficial to him, he immediately found the most comfortable place in the spell formation and lay down, stretching his body in satisfaction. When the tens of thousands of red dots rushed into his body, like swallows returning to their nests, the toxic elements that had troubled him for a long time began to wither and disappear under the repeated scouring of the flame energy. The dark green spots became smaller and smaller, and his body once again became bright red and lively. Even the damage to his body from the previous battle began to slowly heal and solidify under the continuous accumulation of fire elements. Based on this trend, the damage caused by the previous battle could be completely repaired in 3 days. The flaming clone controlled the spirit-gathering spell formation while slowly scanning and probing the structure of Flaming Tiger's body. Under normal circumstances, such an operation would undoubtedly provoke Flaming Tiger's hostility and counterattack. However, at this moment, with the help of the spirit-gathering spell formation, Grimm's spiritual force scan finally broke through the distorting force field on the surface of Flaming Tiger's body and gathered some relevant data. Flaming Tiger, high grade, 3 elemental being, fire. Basic stats, strength greater than 21, vitality greater than 30, agility greater than 21, spiritual force greater than 38. Race innate ability, body of fire from the basic stats. Flaming Tiger, Sindar no longer had an overwhelming advantage against Grimm. Although his body quality was still better than Grimm's, Grimm had a slight advantage over him if he took into account the magic tools and tools he possessed. After all, human magi were not strong in their bodies, but in their brains. Beep. Flaming Tiger's biological model has been established. Collecting data. Target's biological core data is being protected by a life force field. Data collection failed. Currently scanning the superficial body structure. As a free being, Flaming Tiger Sindar naturally could not let go of his spiritual defenses and allow Grimm to do whatever he wanted. Hence, he could only rely on the AI chips scanning light waves and his own spiritual force to gather the data and information he wanted from the energy aura emitted from Sindar's breathing and energy exchange. Although he could not obtain an extremely accurate and perfect body model, he could at least establish a slightly vague structural model of Flaming Tiger. Chapter 888. 3 days later, in an exquisite and gorgeous bedroom, a charming and beautiful scene was playing out. The naked bodies of a man and a woman were tightly intertwined with each other and were fighting with all their strength. Amazing, amazing. My dear, you're the best. Freena's naked body was covered in sweat, and her voice was hoarse from shouting. Grim, who was still in high spirits, would cast fire resistance on her from time to time. Then, he would suddenly transform into a tall and powerful Balrog. The rapid changes brought about by the sudden expansion of his body tortured Freena to the point that she was hovering between life and death. The extreme heat that went straight to the bottom of her heart gave her a completely different feeling. If she didn't have the foundation of a Grade 2 Magus, and if it was any other witch or acolyte, they wouldn't be able to withstand this torment from the legendary fire shaman Grim. However, just as the two of them were immersed in their excitement, a ray of red light penetrated into the secret chamber and circled around the red barrier that Grim had set up. It's a message from my partner. Let me hear it. Freena's eyes almost rolled back as she screamed. As Grim opened a small gap in the red barrier, the ray of red light instantly appeared in front of Freena and turned into a strange rune that floated in the air. Freena, I don't care what you're doing right now. Hurry up and get to mine 3. That Flaming Tiger. A man's anxious and urgent voice rang in their ears as the runes vibrated. However, it was obvious that he was not in a good condition. His words were drowned out by a deafening tiger roar before he could finish his sentence. Under the watchful eyes of the two, the rune quietly dissipated. Damn it, it's that Flaming Tiger. As one of the deacons of Molten City, Freena naturally had the responsibility to ensure the safety of the mines. As soon as she heard that something had gone wrong, she immediately broke free from Grim's embrace and hurriedly put on her robes before leaving. Grim smiled strangely and slowly put on his clothes. He walked out of his residence and slowly made his way to the lower levels of Molten City. Staying in Molten City for 6 or 7 days was enough for Grim to know everything there was to know. As soon as he arrived at the lower level of the Molten City, Grim smelled the thick stench of blood and felt the hot air blowing in his face. There was a hubbub of voices as cries shook the heavens. Large groups of non-humankind slaves struggled to climb out of the tunnels. Their bodies, hands, and faces were covered in scorch marks and big and small blisters. Not only that, but there were also people on fire constantly running out and falling in the underground hall, screaming and wailing. No one could look straight at the scene. Although there were many wizards in the hall, no one paid the slightest attention to the slave miners, let alone cast spells to save them. Their attention was focused on the interior of the mine, and they held tightly onto the instant casting magic wands or witchcraft scrolls in their hands, ready for battle. Seeing Grim rushing down from above, the Magi guarding the mine let out a sigh of relief. 2 of them hurriedly welcomed him. Lord Grim, you're here. What's the situation in the mine now? Where are Lord Kirik and Lord Dorian? Although Grim was well aware of the situation here, he still pretended to be clueless and asked. Lord Kirik and Lord Dorian have already entered the mine. Lord Freyna has just entered as well. A magus in charge quickly explained. Before Lord Kirik went in, he said that if you and Lord Unide came, please go in and help as soon as possible. Although Molten City had treated Grim well and treated him with great courtesy, he was still not allowed to take a single step into the mine. Hence, Grim was very curious about Mine 3, which was rich in eternal gold ore. As they spoke, the ugly Magus Unide also hurried over. Shall we go down and take a look? Grim asked. Unade nodded without hesitation. The 2 of them walked side by side to the entrance of the mine and were immediately shaken by the surging heat waves. Grim raised his hand and cast a barrier of flames on the 2 of them. In an instant, The scorching heat wave that was burning his bones and corroding his flesh immediately became as warm as the wind. It felt like a gentle breeze blowing on his body, bringing him a little warmth. In front of the two of them was a huge mine that was more than 4 meters wide and 3 meters tall. There were no decorations on the ground and walls, and what was exposed was volcanic rock that was as hard as steel. However, on the bumpy stone walls, with the illumination of the flames, they could faintly see specks of golden light. It was the metal that was mixed in with the rock. Less than 100 steps into the mine, they were blocked by a thick and heavy pool of dark red magma. It could be seen that the entire lower half of the pit had been soaked in magma at this moment. Just as the two of them hesitated, the magma in front of them began to surge, producing a series of large bubbles. Evidently, the battle inside was still going on, and it seemed to be very intense. Since we're here, let's go down and take a look. This time, it was Unide who spoke first. Grim smiled and took the lead. His tall body suddenly ignited with a huge flame, and in the blink of an eye, Grim had already turned into an almost transparent, flaming humanoid. Silently, the flaming humanoid stepped into the magma. Not even a single bubble appeared. It was like a drop of water falling into a pool, instantly disappearing without a trace. This was indeed the best battlefield for fire wizards. Unide silently sighed in her heart. She also cast a barrier to keep the magma outside, and then strode into the depths of the lava tunnel. The dark red magma split into two in front of her, sliding past both sides of the transparent barrier. The high temperature of the magma and the magic barrier collided, causing the female sealer from the south to feel a trace of pressure. The deeper they went into the lava tunnel, the stronger the pressure became, and the more obvious it became. However, Unide was a grade 3 witch after all, and this little pressure was not enough to stop her. Moreover, the tall flaming humanoid had been advancing rapidly before her, so she did not need to worry about safety at all. She only needed to resist the invasion of the magma with all her might. At a large fork, Grim suddenly stopped. This was also an underground stone hall, originally filled with all kinds of tables and chairs. There was also a small pile of, or in the corner of the hall. Indeed, at this moment, everything was immersed in the boiling magma. Almost all the wooden objects had disappeared, and only a few special items were barely left. Frina struggled to escape from one of the entrances. When she saw Grim's flaming humanoid form, she dashed towards him while waving her hands in joy. It had only been 15 minutes, but Frina had already sustained serious injuries. Her sexy and hot body was currently covered in scorch marks from the flames, and her beautiful face also had 3 charred black claw marks that ran through her entire face. Her exposed skin was densely covered in large and small blisters and dark spots. Looking at her staggering figure, it seemed that apart from external injuries, there were more serious injuries. Grim stepped forward to support her and patted her body. A strange magical force burst forth, instantly dispelling the flames on Frina's body. Even the fire poison that had invaded Frina's body could be seen with the naked eye turning into sparks, slowly dissipating into the air. A large air bubble instantly wrapped around Frina, floating her in the magma. Lord Kirik is fighting with that flaming tiger in Mine 3. Lord Dorian has gone to activate the spell formation. Lord Grim, you have to help Lord Kirik. Frina looked at Grim as though he was her savior, grabbing his transparent flame hand and shaking it. Got it. You can leave first. Grim nodded slightly, and with a wave of his hand, the air bubble wrapped around Frina and flew out of the tunnel they came from. It seems like Mr. Grim makes friends very quickly. Unid chuckled, brushing past Grim's body as she entered mine number 3. A faint smile hung on Grim's face as he followed them into the cave. The battle between Kirik and the flaming tiger was about 200 meters below mine 3. Here, in a slightly wider tunnel, 2 grade 3 magi of different races were fighting to the death. Kirik was currently standing in a corner of the tunnel, his back against the rock wall. He was waving a small and exquisite witchcraft dagger in his hand, defending against the flaming tiger's attacks from all directions. The dark green gem on his forehead was constantly overflowing with a dark green aura, quickly attacking everything around him. In close combat, it was obvious that Kirik was no match for the Grade 3 Flaming Tiger. However, the Flaming Tiger seemed to be a little afraid of the dagger in his hand, and did not dare to push it too far. The two of them were in a stalemate as they attacked and dodged each other. Grim and Unide's arrival had obviously alerted the Flaming Tiger. It roared and raised a huge wave of 3 feet towards the two, while it pounced towards Kirik. Kirik seemed to be prepared for the Flaming Tiger's attack. The dagger in his hand swayed slightly, and it quickly condensed into a terrifying dark green python, biting towards the Flaming Tiger. The dark green gem on his forehead rippled and quickly wrapped around the Flaming Tiger's body. In the past, the Flaming Tiger would definitely dodge the attacks of a poison magus. However, for some reason, the Flaming Tiger did not dodge and directly collided with the dark green ripple and the terrifying python. Roar. After letting out a deafening roar, the Flaming Tiger smashed through the ripples and was pierced by the dagger in his shoulder. However, he still ignored it and charged forward, ferociously biting towards Cadillac's head. Kirik's poison magic was mostly useless in the lava, and he was also helpless against the domineering Flaming Tiger. He could only desperately run towards Grim and Unai. Chapter 889. It was easy to determine the victor in a battle between high-grade magi, but it was even more difficult to determine the life and death of the other. If one did not force the other party into a corner, it would be almost impossible to kill a rank 3 creature. Therefore, when Grim, Kirik, and Unide surrounded the Flaming Tiger at the same time, it immediately turned tail and ran without hesitation. If this was the original mine, the 3 magi would naturally have the ability to deal with this hateful Flaming Tiger. However, all the tunnels were filled with thick and tumbling magma. Grim's speed was not affected, but Kirik and Unide could only get further and further away. The 3 humans and 1 tiger dashed left and right in the winding tunnels, playing a game of cat and mouse. Seeing that he could not catch up to the other party, Grim roared and said in a low voice, "You guys continue chasing. I'll intercept it from the front." With that, his flaming body suddenly exploded, and he disappeared. In front of the entrance of a mine in the distance, a huge amount of fire elements quickly gathered, and Grim, who had turned into a flaming humanoid, appeared. Seeing that the path ahead was blocked, the Flaming Tiger immediately turned around and disappeared into a side tunnel. Mine number 3 had been excavated by Molten City for over 100 years. The tunnels inside were as dense as a spider's web, extending in all directions. Although it was usually convenient for the slave miners to enter and leave, it had now become an escape route for the Flaming Tiger. Grim used Flame Leap a few times to block the Flaming Tiger's path, but due to Kirik and Unide's delay, it was all for naught. Originally, Kirik and Unide were waiting for Wizard Dorian to activate the spell formation and trap the Flaming Tiger in the tunnel. However, after chasing for a quarter of an hour without any signs of the spell formation being activated, they immediately knew that there was a problem with Dorian. While chasing, Kirik tried his best to contact Dorian, but he could not get a response. After a few times, which Unid was also stirred to the point of anger. "Grim, Brimmy there. We'll split up and intercept." They were all rank 3 magi, but they belonged to different factions, so it was difficult for them to cooperate well. At this moment, Unide was so angry that she made a request to Grim. Otherwise, she would never have let an unfamiliar magus touch her body. "Got it." Grim agreed. In an instant, elements converged and appeared beside Unide. He grabbed her left arm with one hand and used Flame Jump to appear in front of Flaming Tiger. As soon as the Flame Leap ended, Unid used her powerful mind power to get rid of the dislocation caused by the teleportation. The white staff in her hand instantly weaved an airtight golden net towards the Flaming Tiger that was rushing toward her. Flame Tiger Sindar was immediately shocked. It could clearly sense that the net weaved by the golden threads had a faint aura of planar laws. They looked thin as if they could tear them apart with a light bump. But Sindar knew that if he were to touch them, he would not be able to escape today. Stepping on fire sprinting, he leaped into the lava and disappeared from where he stood, just like Grim. When it reappeared, it was already behind Grim and Unide, continuing to run forward. Even a fire wizard like Grim could use flame jump, so there was no reason that Flaming Tiger could not. Damn it. It was easy to release the golden net, but it was not so easy to retrieve it. It would take at least 2 to 3 seconds for the golden net to return to the staff. During this time, Unide was obviously unable to move. Grim could only give up on her and flash to Kirik's side. He grabbed his body and disappeared again. The Flaming Tiger seemed to be on guard against Grim's continuous leaps and attacks. As soon as it saw Grim and Kirik disappear, it turned around without hesitation. This made Kirik, who had emerged from the flames, curse. Grim, only you can hold it back now. Don't worry about the two of us. Catch up to it and hold it back. We'll be there soon. At this point, Kirik finally understood what was going on. In such a cruel environment, only Grim could put up a fight against Flaming Tiger. As for the other Magi, they might not even be able to catch up. In order to increase Grim's chances of winning, Kirik waved his hand, and a dark red ball of light was thrown in front of Grim. This is the map of the underground mine. Hold it back for now. Grim's eyes swept across it, and the AI chip's prompt sounded in his mind. Detected data flow interface. After scanning, there are no security issues. Requesting host's instructions to connect? Connect. Grim held the ball of light to his nose and inhaled. The dark red light instantly entered his body. In the next second, the dense 3D map of the underground mine of Molten City immediately appeared in his mind. Got it. Grim was overjoyed. He had been putting on a monkey show with Flaming Tiger Sindar for so long, just for this moment. Without a map of the underground mine, he would not be able to know the exact location of Molten City's resource warehouse. Mine? What was there? Freshly excavated, ores that had yet to be refined, slag, raw magic gems, and a large pile of useless trash. Even if Grim were to snatch these things back, what use would they be? Therefore, from the moment they arrived at Molten Fire City, Grim had secretly set his sights on the possible resource warehouse in Molten Fire City. With such a large underground mine, the ores excavated every day would definitely be piled up like a mountain. Transporting them outside to be refined, and then transporting them back to Molten City for storage was almost impossible. Thus, there had to be an alchemy laboratory somewhere under Molten City. It was very likely that there were already refined metal ingots stored there. If the raw ores were just some superficial things, then these refined metal ingots were the real meat of Molten City's heart. However, Grim was an outsider. Even if he toured all the famous scenic spots in Molten City, he would not be able to obtain information of this level. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, Grim could not make a move on Freya, so he could only force himself. As he turned into flames and chased Flaming Tiger Sindar through the tunnels, Grim waited for the AI chip's analysis. Since Karlak had handed over the map of the underground mine without any worries, some important information must have been erased from it. However, Grim did not care. With the AI chip, as long as there were any clues on the map, it would be able to help him find them. Mines 1 to 4 were densely packed, like a spider web on the map. Outside the spider web, there were a few places that led to the upper levels of Molten City. Apart from the passage for the Magi station there were 3 more secret tunnels. The alchemy laboratory had to process a large amount of raw metal every day, so it was definitely not small. Moreover, it had to be fast and convenient, and there was a secret passage leading to the upper levels. Combining this information with the information he had gathered over the past few days, as well as the map in front of him, it didn't take long for the chip to lock onto a blank area on the map. With this information, Grim immediately sent a message to Flaming Tiger Sindar, who was in the middle of his pursuit. Flaming Tiger Sindar immediately turned around and started fighting with Grim, relying on Flame Leap. The two of them were like 2 elusive ghosts, darting left and right in the depths of the underground mine. Finally, they reached the place where Flaming Tiger, Sindar, and Grim rushed into the sea of lava, fighting as they ran further and further away. The shockwaves from the depths of the lava almost turned the area upside down. Karlak and Unide couldn't help but look at each other in dismay when they reached the opening. Keep chasing? With their speed in the sea of lava, it was impossible for them to catch up to the two monsters fighting. Give up? Grim was fighting for them, but as the master of Molten City, he had to give up early. Lord Unide, I'll have to trouble you to provide support for Grim. I need to go back and see what's going on with Dorian. There seems to be some problems over there. Karlak immediately made up his mind. Don't worry, Lord Unide. The thing that Molten City promised you, no matter the outcome of the battle, will be delivered to you. We, Molten City, still have this bit of credibility. Since Karlak had already said this much, Unide naturally had no objections. Moreover, with Grim holding off the Flaming Tiger, the risk she had to bear was still within her control. It was worth the risk. All right, don't forget what you said. After agreeing to Magus Karlak, the staff in Unide's hand released a golden halo, blocking the lava outside. She then quickly rushed into the depths of the lava sea with this layer of light. Although she couldn't see anything here, and her power of the will couldn't reach far, she could still follow the traces of the battle from afar. However, unbeknownst to her, at this moment, it was no longer Sindar and Grim who were fighting her in the depths of the lava sea. Instead, it was Sindar and Grim's flame doppelganger. She was quite far away anyway, and with Sindar's rank 3 power as a cover, she didn't have to worry that the flame clone would reveal her true rank 2 power. As for the real Grim, he had already turned into a ball of flame and sneaked back into the mine. He avoided Unide and Karlak and quickly moved towards the location he had locked onto. Chapter 890. Molten Fire City, the control center of the underground mine's defensive spell formation. Dozens of magi were scattered all over the hall, with injuries ranging from light to heavy. At the center of the hall, where the spell formation was located, the spell formation that was originally engraved on the floor had been destroyed beyond recognition and could no longer function. As for Formation Master Dorian, he was covered in blood as he lay beside a broken stone pillar, silently receiving treatment for which Frina. Once Wizard Kirik stepped in, his expression changed. What happened? Who ambushed this place? Kirik roared loudly. It's that Flaming Tiger. Dorian endured the pain and stuttered. His left leg seemed to have been smashed by something, turning into a pile of meat paste. Black blood flowed out of his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose like snakes. It was obvious that his internal injuries were not light either. Flaming Tiger? Kirik's mouth twitched, and he looked like he had seen a ghost. How could it be that Flaming Tiger? It has been fighting with us in the underground mine. Dorian looked extremely dispirited after being injured, but after hearing Kirik's words, he roared in anger. I was going to ask you what happened. Why did we get attacked by that Flaming Tiger the moment I brought people here? And that bastard summoned a lava giant and smashed the control hall into pieces. Kirik's face was full of disbelief. He turned to Frina and asked sternly, "Did you see it too?" "I saw it." Frina hurriedly nodded her head, but then she hesitated. But what? I keep feeling that this Flaming Tiger looks the same as the one from before, and its aura is similar as well. But it doesn't feel like the same one. Dorian also spoke weakly. I have the same feeling too. It seems like this Flaming Tiger is slightly weaker, but the lava giant it summoned is exactly the same as before. Kirik inhaled a breath of cold air. Flaming tigers. More than one. If there was more than one Flaming Tiger, then why did they not show themselves in the past? While he was hesitating, the snake-eye ring on Kirik's right index finger suddenly flashed with a faint red light. This was the communication ring he used to communicate with some of his trusted subordinates in Molten City. He stroked the snake-eye ring with his finger and raised it to his mouth. "Antok, don't bother me if there's nothing important. I'm here. Sir, please come quickly. The laboratory and the warehouse have been invaded. A man's hoarse shout came from the other side of the phone as soon as the snake Irene connected. Behind his voice, there were also temporary screams that rose and fell one after another. Vaguely, one could also hear the familiar roar of a tiger. Cadillac's expression instantly changed. Dorian and Frina, who were close to him and heard the contents of the communication, changed their expressions. No matter how heavy the losses in the underground mines were, even if all the slave miners were killed, they would not be able to make them even bat an eyelid. As long as Molten Inferno City was there, as long as they were there, everything would return to normal. At most, it would only cause Molten Fire City to lose half a month's worth of ores. As the deputy city lords of Molten Fire City, they could still afford such a small loss. However, the secret laboratory and warehouse was a place they could not afford to lose. If anything happened there, even a city lord who had been in seclusion for 10 years would be forced out of the mountain. As for the consequences of disturbing the city lord, just thinking about it made them tremble in fear. Dorian, who had originally wanted to return to his residence to recuperate, immediately pulled out a magic dagger from his waist. With a flash of cold light, he cut off Frina's left leg. Strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out from the wound. Frina screamed in pain, her face pale and her body trembling. However, she did not dare to move an inch. Dorian pressed Freya's broken leg against his own. He took out a bottle of purple potion and gently sprinkled it on the joint of the leg. A faint white smoke rose, and a large amount of transparent mucus appeared at the wound. It was a disgusting sight. However, with a flick of his fingers, Dorian was able to stand up and walk normally. Bring Frina back for treatment. Dorian summoned a magus from Molten Fire City and handed Frina over to him, then hurried to the secret area with Cadillac. Dorian questioned in a low voice as the two of them moved quickly through the tunnel. How many resources are stored there? Cadillac replied with a pale face. Usually, they're sent to the City Lord's Wizard's Pagoda once every 3 months. The City Lord's Wizard's Pagoda has not been open for the past 10 years. All the resources are stored there. Hearing this reply, Dorian felt the world spin around him, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Don't worry. That flame tiger is just a wild beast. How big can its appetite be? How much can it take away if it eats to its heart's content? As for the portion that's missing, we'll make up for it with gritted teeth and get the slaves to work overtime to mine. Cadillac continued to console himself along the way. However, when he and Dorian arrived at the secret laboratory along a tunnel that was paved with rails, it had already become a bloody purgatory on Earth. In the large alchemy laboratory, there were collapsed and broken experiment tables and glassware everywhere. Not a single alchemist who had been working in the laboratory could be seen. However, on the clean floor of the laboratory, there were many scorch marks left behind by the flames. At the center of the scorch marks was a pile of black powder. These were the only things left behind by the alchemists. The few metal golems that were in charge of guarding the laboratory had already been blown to pieces and were scattered all over the laboratory. As for the 2 level 2 magi who were stationed here, they were nowhere to be found. They were probably dead. The 2 of them did not stop there and madly rushed to the warehouse behind the laboratory. Just as they rushed into the warehouse, the 2 of them saw a terrifying flame tiger standing proudly with its head held high. The flame tiger was leisurely swallowing a storage ring into its stomach. Seeing the 2 magi rush over, the flame tiger cracked a smile that was almost human-like, then instantly disappeared in a sea of flames. With the control center of the underground wizard formation destroyed, the ability to restrict long-distance teleportation had been lost. Even if the 2 magi hated the flame tiger, they could not stop it from leaving. After the flame tiger left, the 2 magi looked around and saw the empty warehouse. They could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Things had gotten out of hand. Deep within the lava sea, Sindar's lair, the flame tiger appeared in a burst of dense flames, and on the floor of the lair, a glowing red positioning rune could be seen clearly. The flame tiger chuckled, and with a strange distortion, it slowly turned back into Grimm's appearance. These days, the fire clone had been silently investigating the flame tiger Sindar's basic data and body structure. For this, it had even constructed a model of the flame tiger that was 80% similar to the original. Grim had used his flame-shaping ability to transform himself into the flame tiger Sindar based on this model. With this appearance and the fire spells he used, it would be difficult for normal magi to differentiate the real from the fake. Before doing all this, Grim had secretly contacted Alice, who was far away in the north, and had her blur the branch of his destiny. This way, even if someone discovered some flaws, it would be difficult to use prophecy spells to find out the truth of the matter. Since he had returned safely, he naturally had to put on a good show. Grim closed his eyes and sensed for a moment, then turned around and rushed out of the lair, rushing towards a certain direction in the depths of the lava sea. The battle in the depths of the lava sea continued. Waves of vibrations stirred up the lava sea, but every time Unit arrived at the scene, she would find that the two fellows had already run somewhere else, and a new wave of vibrations would be transmitted from afar. Unit could only grit her teeth and continue chasing. Grim secretly returned to the battlefield and greeted the flame tiger Sindar. He spat out a storage ring and threw it to the fire clone. The two exchanged positions, and Grim continued to fight bitterly with Sindar, while the rank 2 fire clone used the vibrations of the lava sea to escape far away. This time, the man and the tiger did not continue to teleport, but instead fiercely fought on the spot. This was the first time Grim showed his true strength. Along with the ripples of his soul, pieces of strange sorcery equipment slowly emerged on his body. On the head of the flaming humanoid, an exquisite and gorgeous magic crown appeared. At the same time, a pair of magic armlets with intricate patterns appeared on his arms, and a dazzling halo shone from his waist. Powerful magic aura also appeared on his feet and neck. Moreover, these magic equipment seemed to be closely related to Grim's soul. With his mind as the core, a complete set of magic energy was constructed. This was a magic set. Unit, who had rushed over, almost cried out in surprise. She looked at Grim's tall figure with eyes full of envy. And this was not the end. On Grim's shoulder, a strange wooden doll with dense runes carved all over its body appeared. It let out a creepy laugh towards the flame tiger. Another soul equipment. Moreover, it had already gained sentience and had the ability to transform its body. At this moment, Unit was not just envious, but jealous that could not be concealed. Chapter 891. According to their previous agreement, Sindar and Grim would have to fight. Furthermore, they needed this battle to put an end to the whole matter. Therefore, after seeing Grim's actions, Sindar also focused his attention and waited with all his might. However, when it saw the powerful magic tools emerging from Grim's body one after another, Sindar was no longer so sure. Once upon a time, in the fire elemental plane, he had toyed with Grim like a cat toying with a mouse. His opponent's every move could not escape his control. But today it was still the same fire wizard. When a powerful aura shot out from his opponent's body, Sindar could not remain calm. It had only been 10 years since then, but Grim seemed to have changed into a completely different person. Had he already grown to such an extent? Just as Sindar was in shock, a flaming armor formed around Grim's body. It was covered in magical runes, faintly emitting a powerful aura that could shake one's heart. Sindar was not to be outdone by Grim's powerful aura. With a few roars, his entire body rapidly expanded, as if he was filled with air. His body, which was originally only 3 meters long, had now expanded to more than 5 meters. His violent aura also expanded along with it. Seeing that the two in the distance were already fighting with their lives on the line, Unit, who had sneaked to the side, hurriedly hid her figure and silently began to prepare the sealing spell she was good at. She knew that her arrival could not be hidden from the flame tiger's senses. However, as long as she did not get too close to the battlefield, the flame tiger would not be willing to run away in front of a human wizard. As long as she grasped this mentality, she might have a chance to capture this flame tiger today. However, just as this thought surfaced in her mind, a vast and powerful will descended upon the area. For a split second, the raging sea of lava seemed to pause for an indiscernible moment, before continuing to surge forward majestically. The three people present were instantly locked on by that will. A second ago, Flame Tiger Sindar was still ferocious and eager to get into action. In the next second, he had already retracted all of his aura. Like a frightened little beast, he tucked his tail between his legs and quickly escaped into the depths of the lava sea. Looking at the way it was fleeing, it was not going to turn back this time. Grim, who had just finished preparing for battle, lost his opponent, could not help but be stunned. His burning will to fight came into contact with that majestic will, and he instantly withered as if he was electrocuted. Rank 4. This was the spiritual perception of a rank 4 magus. In less than 0.1 seconds, Grim understood the source of this magnificent will. He hurriedly withdrew his mental fluctuations and guarded his mind, not daring to compete with that will anymore. That majestic willpower was like a flowing spiritual sea, quickly sweeping across the entire area. When his spiritual tentacles caught the traces of flames left behind by Flame Tiger Sindar's escape, a cold and angry snort vaguely came from the void. However, the sea of consciousness soon shifted its attention to Grim and Unid, with Grim taking the majority of the attention. "You are Cadillac's guests?" Soundlessly, a wave of spiritual energy seeped into their minds, causing a cold and hoarse voice of a man to ring out in their heads. "Greetings, Lord Alfred. I am Unide from the Hone family." Although Unide had always been arrogant, she did not dare to show the slightest disrespect in front of a reclusive tier 4 magus. When she answered the magus's question, she was also very respectful, like an apprentice meeting an official magus. "Greetings, Lord Alfred. I'm Grim from the Crimson family." Grim also hurriedly bowed respectfully. Although the other party did not actually come here, his powerful willpower covered the area, and everything he did could be seen at a glance. Although Grim had never seen the city master of Molten City before, he had done some research before coming here. To be honest, Wizard Alfred was a powerful magus who had struggled his way up from the grassroots. He was an expert in sound wave spells, and his innate talent was rather unorthodox. However, this did not stop him from steadily progressing step by step, spending 600 years to successfully become a rank 4 magus. At this stage, normal magus resources were mostly useless to him. The resources he needed could only be slowly gathered from the tens of thousands of planes. Although it was rumored that he was living in seclusion within the Wizard's Pagoda, it was still a mystery whether he was actually there. After all, many high-level magi would set up a soul imprint in their private Wizard's Pagoda, then sneak out to explore the endless plains. The reason why he hid his tracks was to prevent his enemies from coming to seek revenge when he was not in the Wizard's Pagoda. This way, there were good and bad situations. His enemies would not dare attack him without knowing where he was going. However, if they were to find themselves in a dangerous area or ancient ruins while exploring the plains, it would be extremely difficult to find someone to save them. Hence, in the middle of the continent, where there were many powerful magi, there would often be powerful magi who went into seclusion for decades. Only when the family caught wind of this and tried to barge into the Wizard's Pagoda would they discover that the soul imprint he left behind had already been destroyed. Once news of this spread, it could cause a drastic change in the family's ranking. After all, many magus families were supported by a powerful core magus. If something were to happen to this core magus, the entire family would collapse. This could be seen from the vampire-born Vic family. No matter how much the family suffered, as long as the old vampire Heinz Vic was still around. The family would one day rise again. But Heinz Vic had become a captive of the Crimson family. Vic became a captive of the Crimson family. Grim didn't even need to do anything. The other vampire families that were eyeing them covetously would instantly cause the Vic family to fall apart. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Hence, the city master of Molten City, a powerful level 4 magus, had not shown his face for more than a decade. Grimm had even guessed that he might be trapped somewhere in the plane. However, now that he sensed the vast spirit sea pressing towards him, he immediately dispelled any thoughts that he shouldn't have. He obediently put away all his pride and offered his respect to the other party. A mutant beast from the fire elemental plane? I didn't expect my Molten City to be so lively while I was away. It's been hard on the two of you. Come back first. I don't think that mutant beast would dare to appear again. Wizard Alfred's cold voice rumbled like thunder in the sea of lava, causing Grimm and Unid to shiver in fear. Grimm was even more thankful that he had already placed a large amount of resources in the storage ring on his fire clone. If the loot was still on him, it would be very difficult to hide it from his powerful level 4 magus all-pervasive spiritual sense. Although the things hidden in the storage ring could not be detected, it might work on normal wizards. However, it might not work on an old monster like a level 4 magus. Who knew if this level 4 magus had the strange ability to detect Eternium and Kaira's alloy from afar? If he found out that Grimm had something like that on him, it would be very difficult for Grimm to step out of Molten City. After receiving the invitation from the city master of Molten City, Grimm and Unid looked at each other and hurriedly returned to the underground tunnel. At the entrance of the underground tunnel, Wizard Kirik had been waiting for them for a long time. Seeing that the two of them had successfully returned, Wizard Kirik stepped forward and said with a smile, "Please follow me. Our city master wants to see you too." The city master, who had not shown his face for 10 years, had suddenly returned. This was supposed to be a great thing, but there was not a single trace of happiness on Kirik's face. Even the smile, just now, was very forced. Which Unid didn't know the truth, so she was a little confused, but she didn't ask anything. Grimm, on the other hand, pretended he didn't know anything. It was a special stone room. The stone room was very simple, and Wizard Alfred was wearing a gray robe and sitting on a stone chair. The layout of the stone room was simple and plain. Wizard Alfred was wearing a gray wizard robe and sitting on a stone chair. When a few of them stepped into the room, Wizard Alfred opened his eyes and looked at Grimm and Unid. Both of them couldn't help but sweat. At their level, a rank higher meant that their power would increase by 10 or 20 times. Even a simple gaze from the other party was enough to make the two of them feel a powerful force pressing down on them, let alone a duel. Also, this kind of spiritual pressure could ignore defense and magic resistance. It was only related to the toughness of the individual's spiritual force. Therefore, Grimm and Unid stood in front of each other, as if they were sitting on pins and needles. They felt extremely uncomfortable. Grimm also wanted a peek at Wizard Alfred's appearance, but his spiritual sense and the AI chip's detection ripples were suppressed by an invisible force inside his body, so he couldn't extend them out. Under this kind of situation, he could only rely on his naked eyes to see what was happening around him. It was a pity that Wizard Alfred's face was covered in a ball of light, so Grimm could not see his true appearance. Wizard Alfred didn't care about Grimm's spying at all. Actually, he didn't need to care. He looked at the two of them for a moment and finally opened his mouth coldly. "You've done well today. Kirik, you can treat your mission as completed. Send them off after you receive your reward." "Yes." Kirik, who was following behind them, quickly replied. But we still haven't caught that flaming tiger?" Unid was slightly stunned. Grimm's expression was also one of astonishment. "It's nothing, it's just a small exotic beast. Our Molten Fire City will take care of it ourselves. You two can leave after you receive your reward. Molten Fire City still has some private matters to take care of, so I won't keep you two any longer." Up to this point, the two wizards could tell from the rank 4 wizard's words that he wanted them to leave. Naturally, they couldn't force them to stay. Although they didn't know why they were being chased away halfway through the mission, they could guess that something must have happened in Molten Fire City. Chapter 892. Molten Fire City in a secret stone room. After sending off Grimm and Unid, Kairak turned around and returned to the secret room. Wizard Alfred, on the other hand, was deep in thought with his brows furrowed. "My lord, I have mishandled this matter. Please punish me." Kylak had a vexed expression as he admitted his mistake. Wizard Alfred waved his hand and interrupted impatiently. "Of course it's your fault. It's just an elemental beast. Even though it's a bit cunning, do you think we can't handle it with the power of Molten City? Why would we let you go to the Wind of Freedom and let everyone know about it? You even brought 2 unknown people in a Molten City." Kayrak quickly lowered his head to accept the lesson. Even if the mine is affected, it's just a little less resource income. But what if these 2 guys are spies sent by someone else? If the secret experiments I've placed in the upper levels of Molten City are leaked, can you bear the responsibility? My lord, I didn't issue the mission the normal way because I was worried about spies. Instead, I personally found 2 suitable candidates. I've already checked their backgrounds, and there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong? Wizard Alfred laughed coldly. If there's nothing wrong, why would they cause such a huge commotion? Even our resource warehouse was robbed. My lord, you mean there's something wrong with these 2? There's nothing wrong with the witch, but there might be something wrong with the wizard. I have a feeling that his motives are not simple. It's as if he's up to something, but I didn't find anything wrong with him. Otherwise, why would I let him leave alive? Kayrak was stunned and whispered, "My lord, why don't I send someone to investigate him?" Alfred thought for a moment and shook his head. "That's fine. The experiments in the Wizard's Pagoda are nearing completion and need someone to protect them. I can't leave for now. Send someone to spread the news and buy some Eternium ore at a high price. See if he has any reaction. Yes, I'll arrange it right away. If it's really him, I'll personally uproot his family and make him regret everything he's done in Molten City today." A month later, Grimm successfully returned to the Flame Monarch's Wizard Pagoda. He had just entered the Wizard's Pagoda when he impatiently dismissed the crowd and arrived in front of the flame altar alone. He waved his hand and lit up the symbol formation hub at the top of the altar. As strange flame ripples spread in the air, Grimm stretched out his right index finger and made a cut on his left palm. Crimson blood flowed out of the cut and dripped onto the flame ripples. With the guidance of this drop of origin blood, the flame altar brought his consciousness across millions of miles in an instant, arriving at a certain place in the underground lava sea. In the next second, as the flame altar trembled slightly, a dark red void rift suddenly opened above the altar, and 2 figures of different sizes emerged from it. It was Flame Tiger Sindar and his fire doppelganger that had been roaming around the bottom of the lava sea. "Kid, after holding it in for so long, you can finally divide the spoils now." Flame Tiger Sindar shouted impatiently as soon as he came out of the void crack. Yang Ling had to admit that Flame Tiger Sindar was trustworthy as an ally. Grimm's fire doppelganger was only at the middle level of level 2. Even after following him for so long, it did not directly try to snatch the storage ring. This made Grimm especially satisfied. The fire doppelganger came to Grimm's side, took out the storage ring from its mouth, and threw it into his hand. It then knocked into his body and merged with him once again. Grimm pinched the storage ring and smiled. With a light wave, the items inside instantly filled the secret room. There were close to 100 wooden boxes of the same size. Flame Tiger Sindar rushed forward and smashed the first wooden box with a claw. Clatter! Several rectangular metal ingots fell to the ground, letting out a crisp metallic sound. The metal ingots were abnormally heavy, and when their surfaces came into contact with the free elemental particles in the air, they immediately dispersed into tiny rainbows. It's magic iron alloy. Another box was opened, and within it were rows of purple metal ingots with a faint purple glow flowing on them. Seeing such pure Eternium ingots, Flame Tiger Sindar immediately pounced forward excitedly, grabbing them and stuffing them into its stomach. As a fire creature, it did not have the habit of using space items. When it came across something it liked, it would always stuff it with food, using its huge stomach as a storage bag. Lord Sindar, Grimm, who was standing at the side, could not stand it anymore and called out softly, "What?" Sindar looked at Grim nervously. I've taken such a big risk. Can't I take something from you? Grim shook his head speechlessly, then extended his hand and handed over a storage ring. Since we've worked well together, then I'll give this storage ring to you. With it, you can take whatever you need from here. Really? Really? Sindar looked at Grim suspiciously, thought for a moment, then grabbed the storage ring and carefully took away the 3 boxes of Eternium ingots. It knew in its heart that even though the human wizard was being nice, if one was greedy enough to cross the bottom line of his heart, it would be difficult for one to walk out of this private wizard's pagoda. Thus, it was not greedy and only took enough for its own use. Grim, on the other hand, took the rest of the wooden boxes. With just a simple entry and exit, the AI chip had already calculated all the Eternium ingots. There were a total of 96 wooden boxes. There were 13 boxes of Eternium ingots, 390 pieces, 120 tons, 32 boxes of Quilla's alloy, 960 pieces, 270 tons, 24 boxes of magic iron alloy, 720 pieces, 117 tons, 7 boxes of secret silver, 210 pieces, 300 kilograms, 5 boxes of fine gold, 150 pieces, 380 tons. The boxes of Eternium ingots that had gone through multiple refinements were mostly high-grade magical metals. They were also high-grade resources that were hard to find on the market. If they were released, Grim and the Crimson family would not be affected by the lack of magical crystals for the next few decades. Grim did not care too much about the other magical metals, but the Quilla's alloy immediately made him beam with joy. With these Quilla's alloys, there was a possibility that the large magical weapons of war in the Goblin Plane could be completed. Every additional magical furnace meant the formation of a magical weapon army. But now is not the time to celebrate. Grim looked at Sindar and asked curiously, Sindar, now that you have this batch of Eternium ingots, where do you plan to go to digest them? If you don't mind, why don't you stay in my Flame Monarch's Wizard Pagoda for a while? No. Sindar rejected him immediately. The reason I came to the sorcerer world is to find a suitable metal that can solidify my body. Now that I have these Eternium ingots, I don't need anything else. It's best for me to return to the fire elemental plane. All right. Even though Grim did not achieve his goal, he did not care about such a small problem. Why don't I open a plane passage and send you back? Flame Tiger, Sindar laughed. Don't forget, I'm a creature from the fire elemental plane. I don't need your help to return to my origin. Next time you come to the fire elemental plane, you can look for me. With a leap, it reached the top of the flame altar. Using the elemental undulations that had yet to completely dissipate, its 2 sharp tiger claws rapidly attacked and actually tore open a spatial crack leading to the fire elemental plane. It drilled into the crack and disappeared without a trace. After he left, a palm-sized model of a dark red flame tiger appeared on the empty space of the altar. Grim walked over and picked it up, sensing a trace of the flame tiger, Sindar's aura. It seemed like this was the communication token left behind by Sindar. If he really returned to the fire elemental plane, it would be much easier to find Sindar based on his aura. After sending Sindar off, Grim waved his hand and closed the flame altar before returning to his residence. At the entrance of his residence, the Scarlet Butler, Gargamel, had been waiting for a long time. What's the matter? The moment he sat down, Grim asked curiously. The Scarlet family had developed to its current scale, and the number of magi and acolytes in the family had reached 300 to 400. They also had over 100 secular territories and resource points. The management of such a large family was naturally handed over to Magus Gargamel and Meryl to take care of. Generally speaking, Gargamel had always been in charge of the family matters in the Eloise area, while Meryl was in charge of the White Tower in the north. Most of the time, Grim had become a hands-off boss and did not involve himself in the family matters. To him, establishing the Scarlet family was to settle down a group of people he cared about, and also to gather some resources for himself. Wasting time on managing the family was something Grim was not willing to do. Hence, out of his own conscience and selfishness, Grimm had delegated all the authority to manage the family matters to Gargamel and Merrill. He was only in charge of gathering the core strength of the family. Hence, under normal circumstances, Gargamel would not trouble Grimm with some ordinary family matters. For him to suddenly come here today, there must be something that he could not decide on or handle. Gargamel hesitated for a moment, but could not help but speak. "My lord, it's about Amelia." "Amelia? What happened to her?" Grimm asked in surprise. In the Flame Monarch's Wizard's Pagoda, everyone knew that Amelia was the apple of Gargamel and the forest demon Ava's eye. She was practically in their mouths, afraid to melt, and in their hands, afraid to touch. With the two of them protecting her, what could possibly happen to her? "My lord, Amelia is fine." But what? Hurry up and tell me. I don't have the time to play riddles with you." Chapter 893. After not seeing her for a few months, Amelia had become even prettier. Compared to Mary's hotness and Alice's mysteriousness, Amelia had a strange and ethereal air to her. From her appearance, Amelia looked like a girl of about 14 or 15 years of age. She had a head of soft green hair and delicate features that always carried a charming smile. She wore a long robe woven from green vines and had a beautiful garland on her head. Her hands were bare, and her fingers were long and slender. Her long nails were smeared with oily green impatiens juice, making her look seductive and beautiful. As her temperament matured, Amelia was no longer as out of place as she was when she was young. She was very quiet, respectfully greeting Grimm as soon as she entered, and then quietly stood behind Gargamel, not saying much. This seemed to be inconsistent with her past personality. The beautiful Amelia and the old and balding Gargamel stood side by side, making it hard to believe that they were father and daughter. The contrast in appearance was simply too great. Grimm narrowed his eyes. Ever since Amelia entered the room, the eye chip had been silently scanning her body. Due to the difference of two ranks, the natural barrier around Amelia's body that was permeated with the fragrance of plants could not block the eye chip's detection. The feedback caused Grimm's brows to furrow. Beep. Scanning targets, basic biology. Name, Amelia race. Unknown creature rank. Peak of rank 1 profession. Nature megastats. Strength 6, vitality 9, agility 7, spiritual force 19. A series of data was gathered together, and a model of a young and beautiful nature magus was constructed in Grimm's mind. However, when the model scanned Amelia's legs, it turned into a pile of messy and disorderly code, as if there was something there that was blocking the AI chip's detection. Grimm smiled warmly. "Amelia, I heard from your father that you seem to have met with some problems recently." Amelia stood up and rolled her eyes at Gargamel, saying indifferently, "It's not a big problem. It's just that there's a problem with the fusion of my body. I can solve it myself." Grimm's smile became even more gentle. "Then can I have a look?" Amelia smiled wryly. She knew she could not reject the patriarch's request, so she could only lift the hem of her green robe. Unexpectedly, what came into view was not a pair of beautiful young girl's feet, but a clump of intertwined octopus tentacle-like roots. The roots were not thick, but they were so dense and numerous that it was dazzling. They clustered around each other, twisting and wriggling like a terrifying 100-clawed octopus. What surprised Grimm the most was that the surface of the roots were translucent, and he could clearly see the greenish-white liquid flowing within. As they wriggled and stretched, specks of natural light hovered around the roots. If one ignored their appearance, they were as beautiful as a dream garden. This plant transformation started from the calf. The upper half was still the fair and plump thigh of a human girl, but from the knee onwards, it actually split into hundreds of strange plant roots that intertwined together. However, these tentacles were obviously under Amelia's control and did not affect her daily life or walking. Did this happen when Ava was growing up? Grimm tilted his head and asked Gargamel. The wrinkled Gargamel shook his head and sighed bitterly, obviously very worried about Amelia's physical condition. After all, this plant transformation had already started for some time. In the beginning, only the feet were affected, and they split into terrifying roots. While Gargamel and Ava were frantically looking around for the reason, this plant transformation had already extended to the knees. Now, some thick green veins had also appeared on Amelia's originally fair and plump thighs, obviously on the eve of the transformation. If they did not find a way to stop this plant transformation, it was obvious that Amelia would completely become a non-human within a year. Although the sorcerer world did not reject foreign sorcerers, these foreign sorcerers had never been able to integrate into the mainstream sorcerers who were mainly humans. This also caused their future growth path to be much more difficult than normal human sorcerers in terms of acquiring knowledge and trading resources. Since even the forest demon Ava felt that the current Amelia was a little strange, it was sufficient to show that the little girl's growth had far exceeded the scope of their control and understanding. Otherwise, with their love for Amelia, they would not have come here to ask Grimm for help. But compared to Gargamel's extreme fear and confusion, Amelia herself was quite calm. Because of this, Grimm had no choice but to chase Gargamel out and have an open and honest conversation with Amelia. After waiting for Gargamel to leave hesitantly, Grimm coldly stared at Amelia, his face revealing a trace of a cold smile. Gargamel is my subordinate, and Ava has also served the Crimson family for so many years. As the head of the family, it is necessary for me to protect their interests. Are you Amelia, or something else? You'd better tell me the truth. Otherwise, at this point, a faint red burning domain had already enveloped Amelia. The lingering flames spiraled 2 meters behind her, the flames surging and spitting out tongues of flame, as if choosing a person to devour. With Amelia's strength only at grade 1, as long as the burning domain closed, she would not even be able to withstand 3 fingers before turning into a puff of flying ash. I'm Amelia. The green-haired, purple-eyed girl looked straight into Grimm's eyes and said sincerely, "Then release the soul protection. Let me personally check." Fused with Yala's soul. Please believe me, I am the daughter of Gargamel and Ava. It's just that. I've fused with another foreign soul. Fused, Grimm repeated, his eyes narrowing even more. Yes, it's a fusion, not a devouring. Amelia emphasized again. Release your soul. I need to check it myself. Amelia naturally knew that this was something she had to experience, so she could only helplessly release her soul and allow Grimm's scorching spiritual force to extend into her spiritual sea. It was as if a red-hot iron rod had been inserted into her brain and was stirring with all its might. Amelia's body trembled, and her eyes rolled back as she was tormented to the point of hovering between life and death. However, she could only forcefully endure it, allowing Grimm to slowly search her spiritual sea for what he wanted. This kind of painful experience was not something a regular person could endure. Hence, most spells that searched for knowledge and extracted memories would cause irreversible damage to the target's mind. Even if the spell was successful, the target would either go mad or die. Fortunately, Amelia was a magus, and her mental fortitude was 100 times that of a regular person after decades of training. Coupled with Grimm's gentle movements, she did not turn into an idiot. When Grimm carefully withdrew his spiritual force from Amelia's spiritual sea, she was already drenched in cold sweat, lying on the floor and twitching nonstop. Now, you believe me, right now? It was a short sentence, but Amelia's words sounded disjointed and weak. She lay on the floor, her body curled up like a lobster. Hundreds of gossamer thin roots wriggled and twisted around her. Grimm muttered to himself silently. The green-haired, purple-eyed girl was right. In this body, there were indeed 2 independent souls. Now, however, they had fused together perfectly, and it was impossible to distinguish them. It was a fusion, not a devouring. According to what she said, one of the souls should be Amelia, the mixed-blood descendant of Gargamel and Ava, while the other was a strange, foreign soul. If Yala's soul directly devoured Amelia, Grimm would undoubtedly kill her without hesitation. But now the two souls had fused together. Amelia was Yala, and Yala was Amelia. There was no longer any distinction between the two. This was going to be a little difficult. While Grimm was examining the green-haired, purple-eyed girl's soul, there was a huge commotion outside his residence. It seemed like someone was madly attacking the door of his residence, causing the door to crackle under the protection of the defensive spell formation. Grimm hesitated for a moment, then finally waved his hand to release the defensive spell formation. With a loud bang, the door opened, and the forest demon Ava rushed in with disheveled hair. Traces of blood could be seen on her body. This was the damage caused by the defensive spell formation's counterattack. If Grimm had not noticed it early and cut off the defensive spell formation's counterattack, her injuries would have been even more serious. How could the residents of a Grade 3 Magus be so easily broken into? As soon as she barged into the residence and saw Amelia twitching on the floor, the forest demon Ava pounced on her and hugged her tightly, roaring at Grimm at the top of her lungs. "What did you do to her? If anything happens to my daughter, I'll fight you to the death." Gargamel rushed into the residence with a bloody nose and swollen face, fiercely grabbing onto Ava. "Don't be rash. Today's matter. I was the one who begged the Lord." With a muffled bang, a dark green tree whip made Gargamel somersault, causing him to fall to the ground, unable to get up. If anything happens to our daughter, you won't be able to live either." Grimm leisurely sat on a chair, silently watching this family farce. In the end, the one who stopped Ava was the green-haired, purple-eyed Amelia. Chapter 894. Goblin Plain, Floating Mech City. This was a huge alchemy laboratory located under the Wizard Tower. In the gigantic assembly workshop that occupied an area of 13,000 square meters, there were many scaffolding that looked like a beehive. Countless gnome engineers and technicians were climbing up and down, either welding, cutting, or hammering, making the place look like a noisy market. Surrounded by the dense scaffolding, one could vaguely see the outline of a huge magical machine. It was a huge magical golem dragon made entirely of metal. Its entire body was 100 meters long from head to tail, and it was supported by 6 pairs of thick, solid metal legs. Every detail on its body was exquisitely carved and lifelike. Due to the large amount of fire-stained copper used to create this huge golem dragon, the surface of its metal surface was a strange dark red. If one hit the metal shell, there would even be dazzling sparks that would ignite the clothes of the attacker. Therefore, there would be 1 or 2 emergency alarms on the huge scaffolding every few minutes, and the goblin sprinklers that were on standby would rush over to extinguish the fire. When Grimm arrived at the workshop with the Wind Wizard, Desira, and a group of goblin engineers, he saw such a chaotic and noisy scene. A huge golem dragon that was 100 meters long. Grimm squinted his eyes, silently observing and pondering. One had to know that even true dragons that reached 100 meters in length were existences like ancient dragons or primordial dragons, and their starting point was at least tier 6. However, this group of weak goblins the size of beans could create such a huge magical machine with exquisite and perfect mechanical forging techniques. Grimm could not help but look at them in a different light. However, even if the goblins had gathered all the high-level technicians and engineers in the entire plane, this was the limit of what they could do. Without the magic furnace technology provided by Grimm, even if all of them worked together and installed coal-powered steam engines in the golem dragon's internal space, it would still be difficult to operate such a huge magical machine. Ever since Grimm, the leader of the Crimson Tribe, arrived at the Goblin Plain and the floating mech city, the most intelligent and experienced goblin engineer had been following closely behind him, muttering lack of funds, many injuries, and lack of apprentices like a monk chanting scriptures. Of course, the thing he was most talking about was the large magic furnace on the blueprint. According to the current golem dragon's weight of 400 tons, the large magic furnace would need to be at least a third of the power of the super magic furnace that the brain monster Gazruvi had fused with in order to be able to power such a huge golem. If one were to consider the numerous magical weapons that would be installed in the later stages of the project, perhaps the power output of the newly built large-scale magical furnace would not be lower than the super magical furnace. As for the super magical furnace, Grimm borrowed a rare mana source to succeed in building it. If he wanted to build another magic furnace that was on par with the super magic furnace, he would have to use even more Kalos alloy. Therefore, while Grimm was inspecting the golem dragon, he was also quickly calculating the consumption of Kalos alloy in his mind. He had obtained 270 tons of Kalos alloy this time. According to the AI chip's latest optimized model, it was enough to build 67 spatial furnaces or 26 magic furnaces. However, if he wanted to build a large magic furnace, he would probably only be able to build 3 to 4 of them. When he thought about the patrol mothership, Goblin Dragon Spear, Spatial Ripper, and the legendary Thunder God Titan that were already on the construction list, Grimm felt a headache coming on. He had a feeling that all his assets would be destroyed by these weak goblins in one go. However, the Golem Dragon was only a preliminary test product. He wanted to accumulate some experience in building the real killing machines in the future. Among the large magic machines, Grimm was naturally most interested in the Patrol Mothership and the Thunder God Titan. No matter how strong the Golem Dragon was, its basic strength was enough to fight a rank 4 creature. However, it was too clumsy and could not fly. If the rank 4 enemy was too cunning and used these weaknesses to play guerrilla warfare, the Golem Dragon might not be able to withstand it. This was evident from the fact that the rank 4 Witch of Death, Thuna, could defeat a rank 4 giant dragon by herself. Therefore, in Grimm's mind, even if the future Golem Dragon was successfully built, it could only be considered as the lowest level for Golem. However, with the Crimson family lacking a rank 4 Magus, it was still a good thing to have a rank 4 magic machine. The only thing that mattered now was whether it was worth it. Grimm finally stopped and turned around to look at the old goblin who was following him too closely and almost crashed into him. My name is Ganga, the current dean of the Goblin Empire's Royal Engineer Academy. I'm also the supervisor of the construction of this Golem Dragon. You seem to have mentioned too many difficulties and technical problems. I don't want to hear that now. I'm only concerned about what will you give me in return if I provide you with a large magic furnace of sufficient power? Grimm placed his hands behind his back and raised his eyebrows, looking arrogant. Hearing Grimm's words, the goblins gathered around him held their breaths. The goblins here were at least high-ranked engineers. They had participated in the entire process of building the Golem Dragon, so they naturally knew the value of a large magic furnace. In the past, they had complained countless times to the wizard station here about the lack of apprentices, lack of funds, and constant injuries. However, the thing that bothered them the most was the lack of a strong heart that could drive the Golem Dragon. Countless complaints, countless requests, and countless expectations. Every time they were rejected by the wizard station here, they did not even have a reason to explain. This undoubtedly made the goblin engineers anxious and restless. They thought that such a large construction project would go down the drain just like that. However, today was the first time they heard news of a large magic furnace from the Crimson family's master. How could they not be excited? A powerful grade 4 Golem Dragon. Dean Ganga stretched his neck and shouted, "Grade 4. It's a grade 4. It will definitely be able to wipe out all grade 4 enemies for you." Seeing the old goblin shouting himself hoarse and spitting saliva everywhere, Grimm could not help but snicker in his heart. Grade 4. These goblins who were used to being tigers would not be able to imagine how terrifying a real grade 4 creature was. Did they think that those grade 4 magi would be like those stupid warriors who would raise their battle axes and fight with the Golem Dragon? The power of a real grade 4 Magus had already exceeded the limits of mortals' imagination, and they definitely had a lot of ways to deal with these clumsy and slow creatures. So what if they were big? So what if they had a sturdy shell made of magic metals? If they met a real grade 4 Magus, they would only become a pitiful and miserable wooden dummy. It was not a problem for them to defeat the Golem Dragon. The only problem was whether they were willing to pay the huge price of cutting down a sturdy wooden dummy. That was why Grimm was not tempted by the old goblin's fanatical propaganda. Instead, he had a more accurate and deeper understanding of the golem dragon than the old goblin. A grade for golem? Good, very good. Grimm did not burst Ganga's bubble of idealism. Instead, he changed his tone. So, what other difficulties do you have to achieve this goal? This. Ganga hesitated for a moment. Even with the current strength of the floating mech city, they would need to go all out to create such a terrifying golem dragon. Not to mention the technology and workers. There were more than 100 goblin transport teams that transported the iron ingots. Every day, they shuttled back and forth between the mines and transported the ores they collected to the floating mech city. The ores would then be processed by the various smelting factories, refineries, and purification workshops before finally being delivered to the hands of the goblin technicians. The subsequent smelting and forging of the magic alloys were done in the small goblin laboratories, and the daily output was only a few hundred kilograms. In order to gather enough magic alloys for the golem dragon, nearly 1,000 goblin engineers and technicians had to work day and night. Just the number of goblins that died of exhaustion in the laboratories and operating tables had already reached 100. The reason why they worked so hard was because they wanted to witness the birth of a god-tier golem dragon with their own hands. For some of the native creatures that could not step out of the plane due to the restrictions of their race, Grade 4 was indeed the highest level in the plane. It was worthy of being called a god. It was because the goblins had sacrificed so much that Ganga was worried that the young human wizard would be scared away by the difficulty he posed. We can solve the other problems ourselves. However, there are 3 problems that we cannot solve with our strength alone. Speak. The first is the problem of apprentices. Although the Lord Wizard has sent us 5 apprentices, under their guidance, we can also carry out some rune etching work. However, there are too few goblins that have mastered this technique. At the very least, the number of apprentices we have is far from enough to carve all the rune circuits and spell formations in the golem dragon. Grimm pondered for a moment and quickly obtained some internal information from the AI chip. He then gave the old goblin a resolute reply. From the day after tomorrow, I will send you another 100 apprentices from the family. The number of magi will also increase, and they will work with you. Chapter 895. Secondly, we are in urgent need of various gems. You should know that in the Goblin Plane, there are very few magic gems that are produced along with metal mines. Even if we manage to collect some, the quality is usually very low. So, hearing Ganga's complaints, Grimm muttered to himself. He knew all of this, as Gargamel and Merrill had reported it to him before. However, considering that the Goblin Plane was not the main focus of the Crimson family, the Goblin faction with the Mech City at its core had undoubtedly received the least amount of Magus resources. Now, with the abundance of Kair's alloy, the Goblin faction would undoubtedly rise to the same level as the Magi faction and the Vampires faction. It was only right to allocate some resources to them. Having made up his mind, Grimm made a promise without hesitation. From now on, the Mech City will start counting the number of goblins that have the status of a high-grade technician or engineer. Their basic treatment will be the same as that of an acolyte. Those that are selected to join the Magic Energy team will be treated the same as official magi. You go and improve the plans for a few main magic equipment and give me a list of resources. I will inform Gargamel to prioritize the resources here. Old Goblin Ganga could not help but sob as he spoke. In the past, the goblins had always been a vassal of the Crimson family. Apart from Duke Tigula and the sage Cabby who could speak up for them, they did not have any say in most of the family matters. Now, the head of the Crimson family had personally promised to give high-grade goblins the same status as magi and acolytes. How could the old goblin not cry tears of joy? All right, calm down. Grimm interrupted Ganga's crying and frowned. You said there were 3 problems. What is the last one? Ganga quickly wiped away his tears and flung the green fur on his head behind him. He said in high spirits, I still want to ask the head of the family for a little Kayer's alloy. This special magic metal is the key material for our spatial furnace or magic furnace. I want to organize a group of goblins to research Kayer's alloy and see if we can find a similar substitute. That way, your development will no longer be limited by the amount of Kayer's alloy. Grim looked at the old goblin and the group of green-skinned goblins in surprise. They were not even as tall as his waist, but their arrogant tone made Grim look at them in a new light. With regard to the special effects of the Kalos alloy, Grim had long since understood it clearly through the AI chip. It would be very difficult to refine a similar magic alloy in the laboratory through directional modulation. However, the old dwarf's suggestion was indeed far-sighted. Grim pondered for a moment before replying. Kalos alloy is a magical metal. The Goblin Laboratory in the Mekmek City doesn't have the equipment to analyze and decompose it. Since you have this intention, then put this laboratory in the White Tower. You can choose a group of experienced engineers to be stationed in the White Tower. I can allocate a special alchemy laboratory for you there. The gnomes cheered loudly. Only the wind wizard Desila, who was following behind Grim, smiled faintly, clearly understanding Grim's intentions. For a long time to come, the Kalos alloy would become the most important Magus resource for the Crimson family. Many of the family's core work revolved around the Kalos alloy. Under such circumstances, as the leader of the Crimson family, how could Grim hand over such an important resource like the Kalos alloy to a group of gnomes whose credibility and loyalty could not be guaranteed? The reason why Grim had set up this laboratory in the Magus World's White Tower was because he wanted to place this group of high-level gnomes under the watchful eye of the family. This way, even if they produced some results, it would quickly fall into the hands of the Crimson family. This was to prevent them from holding onto important weapons that could be used to threaten the higher-ups of the family. Hence, Grim's words sounded like he was thinking for the gnomes, but in reality, he had already laid a wedge in the future development of the gnomes. Of course, this was not considered a conspiracy, but an open and above-board one. With the simple and straightforward minds of the gnomes, they naturally could not think of the deeper meaning behind each order. Instead, they were excited by the beautiful future that Grim had promised them. After solving some of the practical problems of the gnomes, Grim was about to leave the gnome plane when he received a request from the gnome princess Vanessa. He could not help but stop in his tracks. Grim received Vanessa in a hall on the upper level of the Magus Tower. It had been a while since they last met, and Princess Vanessa's appearance had changed drastically again. There were also some strange spiritual ripples on her body. Looking at the trend, looking at the development, Grim was slightly stunned. Was she planning to walk the path of a mechanical wizard? As expected, some of the books that Grim had sent back had piqued Princess Vanessa's interest. With her current condition, it seemed like the path of a mechanical wizard was the only choice. It might not be a problem for a human soul to be temporarily attached to an alchemy puppet, but as time went on, there would be problems. Without the nourishment of flesh and life force, Princess Vanessa's soul would only become weaker and weaker. If she did not want to be reincarnated into an undead creature, it was only a matter of time before her soul deteriorated. If she could successfully advance using the path of a mechanical wizard, she would at least be able to maintain the nourishment of witchcraft energy on her soul and get rid of the awkward situation of being neither human nor puppet. However, it was not suitable to walk the path of a mechanical wizard in the gnome plane, which was a place with weak magic. Hence, Vanessa wanted to ask Grim for permission to enter the White Tower for further training. Grim thought about it and secretly consulted Desela before agreeing to Vanessa's request. There were already a few gnomes in the White Tower who had crossed the threshold to become a wizard and had become official wizards recognized by the Crimson family. As long as they could prevent them from forming a small faction, there would not be any problems. Meryl was in charge of the White Tower, and a few gnome wizards could still be suppressed. Hence, Grim was not worried about that. After seeing Princess Vanessa leave in high spirits, Grim communicated with the wizard stationed in the gnome plane, Desela. He confirmed that the governance of the gnome plane was stable and there were no major problems. After making sure that he knew what was going on, Grim decided to head to the Wizard World's Tower of Destiny. There, the battle between the Witches of Destiny and the Winter Witches had just ended. Alice had urged him several times to attend the Witches of Destiny's celebratory banquet. However, just as he arrived at the top of the Wizard's Tower and was about to use the teleportation formation to return to the Wizard World, a white light flashed in the teleportation formation. A moment later, a heavy and bloated body appeared before him. It was Jellu, the brain monster Gazruvi's sub-brain Jellu. Grim could not help but be stunned when he saw the wriggling octopus-like brain in the middle of the 5-meter-tall, giant metal body. What are you doing in the gnome plane? Grim could not be blamed for being surprised. After all, the sub-brain Jellu was the only clone of the brain monster, and could almost represent the brain monster. When a lance plane was expanding its space, it should be the busiest time for the sub-brain Jellu. How did it get the chance to come to the gnome plane? When the sub-brain Jellu saw Grim, the octopus-like brain immediately squeezed out a human-like smile. "Sir, I've come to the gnome plane to invite you." "Invite me?" Grim was even more stunned. "Yes, I heard that you've been busy in the gnome plane for half a day. My main body has many things to say to you. That's why I've been sent here to welcome you." Looking at the obsequious smile on the octopus-like brain, Grim vaguely understood what was going on. Looks like it's the Kalos alloy again. This brain monster's nose and ears are quite sharp. He had not even told Gargamel about the Kalos alloy he had just obtained. He had only revealed a bit of information in the gnome plane, and the brain monster had already heard about it in the lance plane. This intelligence work is quite good. Grim smiled and said calmly, "Then let's go. I also want to see how the lance plane is developing." After saying this, the sub-brain Jellu did not linger in the gnome plane. He directly teleported with Grim to the Lance Plane's eternal capital. Lance Plane, the eternal capital. Once again exiting the teleportation circle, Grim was led by the clone brain, Jellu, through the air corridors and steel towers. Following the spiral staircase, they walked for more than an hour before arriving at the core hall of the steel tower where the brain monster was hiding. It had only been a few days since they last met, but the number of Grade 2 magical warriors near the core hall had increased. However, compared to the official Grade 2 Tigula, the magical warriors created by the brain monster could only display Grade 2 strength when they were within its control. Once they left the steel tower, without the brain monster's continuous supply of mana, their strength would probably fall below Grade 2. It cannot be helped. The brain monster did not have enough Kalos alloy to create mana cores for them one by one. Therefore, they could only hide in the steel tower and act as the brain monster and Jellu's personal guards, suppressing the natives of the Lance Plane living in the eternal capital. As soon as Grim stepped into the core hall, the brain monster Gazruvi's vast spiritual will was focused on him. Chapter 896. "Tell me, what business do you have with me this time?" Grim asked impatiently. "My lord, I heard that you promised to give them a batch of Kair's alloy in the Goblin Plane." The air in the steel hall vibrated slightly. In order to accommodate Grim, Gazruvi could only use his spiritual force to vibrate the air to speak. "You're quite well informed." Grim smiled faintly. "I haven't even warmed up my words in the Goblin Plane, but you've already smelled it in the Lance Plane." "Of course. After all, the Goblin Plane used to be my homeland, so I still have some connections there." The brain monster chuckled. "I'm warning you. Your current focus is on the Lance Plane. You must guard this forward base to the death. Don't let the dragons chase you out. As for the Goblin Plane, don't interfere recklessly and affect the family's development." Although the brain monster had been behaving well recently, Grim could not help but want to give it another warning. This brain monster Gazruvi was a fellow that bullied the weak and feared the strong. If he was too lenient with it, it would easily cause a backlash. As for loyalty, Grim was not that stupid to believe in the loyalty of a Grade 3 brain monster. On the surface, he and Gazruvi were subordinates, but in reality, they were more like allies. The mark he had placed on the brain monster's soul could have been erased long ago with its strength. if not for the fact that Grimm had some backup plans in the super magical furnace, and that the brain monster did not have the confidence to withstand the backlash from the Crimson family. Gazruvi would have long since broken free from Grimm's soul shackles and lived his own life. Therefore, Grimm had to be extremely careful when dealing with this grade 3 brain monster that was flying higher and higher and was in danger of breaking free from the kite string. Understood. My lord, don't worry. The dragons have already tried many times. Although they can heavily damage my eternal capital, it's a delusion if they want to uproot this place. If they dare to come again, I'll make them regret it. That's good, my lord, you see. The development of the eternal capital has reached a bottleneck. In the short term, those dragons won't be able to break in, and we won't be able to break out either. The crux of the problem lies in the Kalos alloy. Do you want to transfer some Kalos alloy to the eternal capital? The brain monster carefully probed. Grimm smiled coldly and said, those goblins promised to forge me a tier 4 puppet dragon within a year or two. That's why I gritted my teeth and gave them the Kalos alloy. What about you? What can you bring me? Don't tell me you're planning to take away my treasure with empty promises? Although Grimm's tone was not friendly, the brain monster's heart was suddenly excited. It was really scared, as Grimm only had a little stock. In that case, no matter what he said, he wouldn't be able to snatch the batch of Kalos alloy from the goblin camp. After all, the value of a tier 4 puppet dragon was shockingly high, and it could not afford such a huge sum of money. Sir, I can't provide you with another 1,000 demonic mechanical core. I don't need the demonic mechanical core for the time being. The Crimson family's development is still stable, and there's no urgent pressure for war. You should use the demonic mechanical core yourself. My lord, I can attack the dragon lords for you, yes. With the demonic mechanical core you have now, it won't be a problem to take down a few dragon lords. But Grimm could not help but smile. How many dragons can you capture for me? The brain monster Gazlu was embarrassed and fell into silence. It could not be helped. This was the weakness of its strength. The demonic mechanical core, which numbered in the tens of thousands, was like a torrent of steel, enough to flatten the territory and nest of any dragon lord below grade 4. However, in order to capture the giant dragon, the brain monster, Gazruvi, was powerless and helpless. Although it was grade 3, it was not good at fighting. Even though it had the psionic ability as a weapon, it was not willing to step into the battlefield due to its fear of death. The many subordinates it had created could not control the sky. But which dragon and lance didn't know how to fly? Seeing that the demonic mechanical core was unstoppable, the dragons would not hide in their nests and wait for death. Before the demonic mechanical core could rush into its nest, it had already packed its bags and fled. Therefore, it was easy for the demonic mechanical core to defeat the dragon lords, but it was wishful thinking to capture the dragons that flew high in the sky. If Grimm was willing to provide some magic furnace for the brain monster to build a batch of floating warships, this problem would be solved. Therefore, even though it was embarrassing, the brain monster Gazlu could not help but want to obtain some Kalos alloy in advance. Seeing the brain monster remain silent, Grimm could not help but change the topic. What about Arms the Thunder Dragon? What has he been doing these days? The one who answered this question was the clone brain Jellu. Lord Arms has occupied a vast territory 300 kilometers away from the southwest corner of the Eternal Capital. He's living a good life there. That female dragon is sleeping with it again. Yes, tell him to be careful. I'm afraid most of the dragon lords in the Lance Plain already know about his relationship with us. Be careful not to let the dragons trick him into a trap. Grimm frowned. I will make sure Lord Arms' territory is safe. The clone brain Jellu still had a fawning expression. My lord, I heard that you already have territories in the central and northern parts of the Magus continent, and are currently lacking a large aerial force. Why don't I help you build an invincible aerial fleet? Oh, what do you mean? Grimm's interest was piqued. The Eternal Capital does not lack large amounts of metal, but we do lack magic furnaces. As long as you give us 2 magic furnaces, we will help you build a cruising mothership for free. Don't forget that the blueprints of those goblins' magical equipment were all from my body's predecessor. The brain monster Gazlu remained silent, as if tacitly agreeing to Jelu's suggestion. Grim could not help but squint his eyes. I'll give you 2 magic furnaces. Keep one for your own use, and build a cruising mothership for me. Is that what you mean? Yes. Heh. This suggestion sounds good. But those goblins seem to be able to do it. Besides, if I give them 2 magic furnaces, they'll repay me with 2 cruising motherships. The clone brain Jelu's octopus-like brain secretly communicated with the main body. Without hesitation, the clone brain Jelu raised his offer. 2 magic furnaces, and we'll build a cruising mothership for you. We'll also give you a magic army of 300 people, all of which I guarantee will be top-grade goods. I'll give you 3 magic furnaces, and you'll build 2 cruising motherships for me, along with a magic army of 500 people. Furthermore, the cruising mothership you build will have to obey the family's orders when needed. However, if there's any damage, the family will compensate in full. The clone brain Jelu and the main body discussed in silence for a long time, and finally reluctantly agreed. In fact, this was only one of the brain monster strategies. It sounded like such a deal would require the brain monster to take out a lot of goods, but in reality, it would not hurt its vitality at all. What did the brain monster lose in building the cruising motherships and magic army? Just some magic alloys and time. Magic alloys could be found in metal veins and lance, and the factories and magic energy used to build them were all the brain monster's own. As long as it was given time and energy, it could have as many of these things as it wanted. Hence, even though Grimm's conditions were so harsh, the brain monster still felt that it was worth it. Then, my lord, how many magic furnaces do you plan to give us first? The clone brain Jelu could not help but probe Grimm's background. Let's go with the standard of 6 magic furnaces for now. When you let me see for cruising motherships, I'll give you 6 magic furnaces. The clone brain Jelu could not help but be ecstatic. 6 cruising motherships. This was not a difficult task for the Eternal Capital, and it would probably take at most a month or so to successfully build them. However, this meant that the metal storage of the Eternal Capital was a little tight. It seemed that he had to hurry up and send out prospecting teams to find all the metal veins near the Eternal Capital as soon as possible. They quickly came to an agreement, and both sides ended up happy. Grimm did not stay in the Eternal Capital for long, and turned to step into the teleportation formation to return to the Magus World. Magus World, Tower of Destiny. As the dazzling white light of the teleportation formation gradually faded, Grimm saw Alice, who had come to welcome him. Behind her were the Berserk Witch Sophia and another newly promoted Witch of Destiny. They had not seen each other for a long time, and Alice looked a little haggard, but she seemed to be in a good state of mind. How is it? I heard that you used up a lot of Destiny energy in this battle. Did you hurt your soul? Grimm took a few steps out of the teleportation formation and grabbed Alice's waist. Although they were already intimate, Alice was still not used to Grimm being intimate with her in public. The moment Grimm's warm hand touched her waist, Alice blushed and rolled her eyes at him, but she did not push his mischievous hand away. It's been a few days since we won, and you're only willing to come after so many times. Humph, it seems that I have no place in your heart. Alice could not help but grumble. Don't change the subject. Tell me, how much Destiny energy did you use up in this battle? Grimm asked again in a low voice. Chapter 897. Although Alice had defeated Morgana, it was only a Pyrrhic victory in the end. Morgana lost the reputation of the chilly winter witches and nearly 1/3 of the family's resource points, while Alice lost all the power of destiny that she had painstakingly accumulated. After all, this was the foundation that Alice had accumulated after participating in 3 consecutive planar wars. However, the Destiny Witches had obtained a huge turnaround, and their overall strength had improved by leaps and bounds. At present, the number of Destiny Witches belonging to the Tower of Destiny had reached 7. Although they still hadn't reached the level of advancing to the Farron position, the quality was much higher. And as the territory controlled by the Destiny Witches grew larger and larger, the apprentice seeds screened from all over the place were also increasing. The 7 Destiny Witches ran around the territory day and night, selecting the talented apprentice seeds from these apprentice seeds and sending them back to the Tower of Destiny. As for those with inferior talents, they were placed in the nearby resource points to study and advance. After 100 years of revival, for the first time in history, the number of witch apprentices gathered in the Tower of Destiny was as high as 100. This was an unprecedented grand occasion in the history of the Destiny Witches. 100 witch apprentices in any witch faction would only be considered too few, but the Destiny Witches were an exception. As everyone knew, the Destiny Witches were not known for their combat effectiveness. In the early stage, there were almost no professional skills related to combat. Only those like Alice who struggled to reach grade 2 and mastered the professional skills of Destiny Blessing and Reduction would have a dazzling performance on the battlefield. Before that, most of the Destiny Witches could only rely on instant magic wands and witchcraft scrolls to protect themselves. This also increased the difficulty of their survival on the battlefield from one aspect. Therefore, before the Destiny Witches grew up, they especially needed external protection. It was precisely because of these fatal flaws that the number of witch apprentices in the Destiny Witches was far less than that of other factions. And those who could rely on the Destiny Witches were probably the hypocritical witches who had difficulty in advancing and had harsh prerequisites. It was said that the basic conditions given by the hypocritical witches to select a witch apprentice were female, no immediate family, awakening the talent of illusion before the age of 8. These prerequisites alone were enough to screen out most of the candidates, not to mention how difficult it was to advance later. Therefore, the hypocritical witch system was more like a single apprentice system, that is, a hypocritical which would only train one apprentice in her lifetime. This also caused the origin of the hypocritical witches to easily die halfway due to accidents. To be honest, if one were to ask which faction was the weakest among the northern witches with the least number of people, the Witch of Hypocrisy would definitely be elected with the highest number of votes. The Witches of Destiny came second. If Alice didn't know Grimm, she wouldn't have been able to endure the painful process of level 1 with her family's shallow foundation. And now, with the deep cooperation between the Destiny Witches and the Crimson family, the strength of the Destiny Witches was not so weak under the double protection of the metal magic machinery and the elemental magic puppet. Under such circumstances, the development of the Fate faction seemed to be flourishing. After spending 2 days with Alice in the Tower of Destiny, Grimm was urged by Wizard Merrill to go to the White Tower. These days, the White Tower was bustling with noise and excitement. After 5 years of cultivation by the Crimson family, the tentacles of the family's influence had already extended nearly 300 miles into the depths of the Black Forest. This action had undoubtedly deeply touched the nerves of many powerful magical creatures, and the expected counterattack of the demon wave broke out. The demon wave that erupted in the depths of the Black Forest was both an opportunity and a tribulation for the Crimson family, who had just established their foothold here. If they were able to withstand the counterattack of the demon wave, they would control the rich and fertile land and forest nearby. If they were to fail, everything would return to square one. The Crimson family's efforts and resources over the past 5 years would all be for naught. Therefore, Merrill, who was under great pressure, immediately began to recruit powerful wizards from within the family to head to the front lines. It was reported that the Dragon Man Zacha and the Goblin Tygol had already arrived and were engaged in a fierce battle with the powerful magical creature lords in the Black Forest. As for the family's #1 warrior, the Blood Queen Mary, she was on the eve of advancing to level 3 and was hiding in the Crimson Throne Wizard Tower. However, a few of her powerful servants had all arrived, forming a solid line of defense for the Crimson family. The other powerful wizard, the insect Lich Bliss, had gone to the center of the continent to investigate some ancient ruins and could not be contacted for the time being. That was why Merrill, who was worried about the losses at the front lines, could not sleep at night. She would frantically urge Grimm, the leader of the family, 3 times a day. Therefore, Grimm could only reluctantly leave the Tower of Destiny and return to the White Tower. Doffland Basin. This was a wide basin filled with fiery red coxcombs. It was oval in shape and was high in the west and low in the east. In the vast Black Forest, this was the most open area, and it became the place where the Crimson family and the ferocious Beast Tide fought the most intense battle. A sturdy stronghold was set up with the Doffland Basin as the center. Large numbers of Crimson wizards, apprentices, and citizens guarded the area, creating a solid wedge in the flank of the massive Beast Tide. Although there were a few scattered beasts and magical creatures near the White Tower, the largest group of monster lords kept loitering outside the stronghold. Before killing the human wizards who had entered the depths of the Black Forest, the monster lords did not dare to step into the area covered by the White Tower. The battle continued at the highest point on the west side of the Doffland Basin. The Crimson Wizards organized their citizens and goblin construction teams to build an incomparably sturdy wooden stronghold. The surrounding trees and shrubs had all been cleared. Thick and sturdy logs had been sharpened and driven deep into the soil. They were densely arranged to form a layer of sturdy walls. On top of the stronghold walls, about 2 meters above the ground, there was a series of bowl-sized holes. Magical muskets that shone with a golden metallic luster extended out from the holes. Almost 1,000 White Tower citizens and goblins in the stronghold each had a long-barreled magical ray gun, as well as a short-handled musket at their waist. The former relied on magical batteries to fire a weakened version of the scorching ray. It had a range of 120 meters and an attack power of 11 degrees. Normal beasts did not have so-called magic resistance, and the scorching ray would leave a bloody hole in their bodies. They could not withstand this level of attack at all. Even the monsters below Grade 1 would not be able to avoid being injured by such an attack. The latter was the original version of the goblin musket. It relied on alchemy to fire metal bullets to kill enemies. It had a range of 10 to 40 meters and an attack power of 8 degrees. A single goblin musket might not be powerful, but when a group of muskets were concentrated, even Grade 1 monsters would be at a disadvantage. It could be said that without the Crimson family's large-scale promotion of the magical ray guns and goblin muskets, normal citizens and goblins would not have the qualifications to fight against monsters and beasts in the Black Forest. But now, with these basic weapons, anyone who could pull the trigger could smoothly become a monster hunter. They could hide behind the sturdy stronghold walls and kill the swarms of beasts with ease. When groups of beasts and vicious birds surged out of the Black Forest to the east of Doffland Basin, crossing the low-lying basin and charging towards the stronghold, the walls of the stronghold were dotted with red light. Scorching rays sizzled as they pierced through the sky, landing in the densest area of the beast horde. Whether it was the fat razor boars, the flying berserk apes, or the agile forest leopards, it was difficult for them to charge through the middle of the basin. The concentrated, scorching rays were like the eyes of the Grim Reaper. Wherever they extended, death would follow. Forest beasts and ferocious birds fell to the ground in the area where the red light intersected, their bodies riddled with bloody holes. When the thick-skinned monsters relied on their magic resistance to charge forward, the Crimson magus hiding behind the stronghold walls would use berserk spells to drown them in an instant. Using crude and primitive fur and dense flesh to test the might of human magi was an extremely unfair thing in itself. But here, in this chaotic battlefield, it was repeated over and over again. Most of the beasts and ferocious birds fell on the path of the charge. Even if there were some that managed to make it to the front of the walls, what awaited them was a row of metal magical machinery that was made of steel and iron. Within the Crimson family, metal magical machines and elemental magical machines were the necessary and powerful guards for every official magus. One was solid metal, while the other was ferocious. They had become the Crimson Magi's indispensable arms. It was impossible to charge to the Crimson Magi's side without defeating these two fellows. However, as blood and flesh flew everywhere in the basin, The 7 grade 2 magi of the Crimson family stood calmly in front of the tent in the center of the stronghold, observing the battlefield from afar. Dragonman Zacha, Goblin Tigul, Blood Knight Soros, and Winsau, Blood Elf Isa, Wizard, Leia, Magic Archer, Spara, Shapeshifter. As the core fighting force of the Crimson family, these 7 rank 2 magi represented Grimm, the goblins, and the vampires. Apart from a few top-ranked magi, this was the strongest the Crimson family could muster. They could clearly see that these beasts could not even break through a stronghold in the wilderness, so why did they have to go to the White Tower to die? The reason the Crimson family chose to defend against the beast wave was to reduce the pressure around the White Tower on the surface, but it was actually an internal selection and elimination of the magi. These days, the Crimson family had many newly matured magi, and the higher-ups of the family obviously wanted to use this beast wave to select the elites. Thus, these grade 2 magi were only responsible for suppressing the situation. The real ones fighting the beast wave were the grade 1 magi and acolytes of the family. Chapter 898. Wizard Locke was extremely busy right now. As the family's newly promoted magic machinist, the Goblin Locke Jr. quickly became a superstar battle wizard in the White Tower with his exquisite magic machinery manipulation skills. In this battle, he was assigned to the left side of the walled city, leading a group of more than 200 gnomes to defend a 50-meter-long wall. There were 2 other wizards in the same area as him. One was the blood elf archer Sandor, and the other was the human wizard Adele. From this arrangement, it could be seen that almost every region was a combination of magi from several factions. During the fierce battle, Locke's mind was always haunted by the words that the goblin hero, Tygol, had said to him in secret. Not only did he tell him the secret behind the beast horde, but he also told him to perform well and fight for the gnome camp. It was precisely because he knew about this in advance that the goblin wizard Locke was unusually brave and risked his life. He also suspected that Sando, the blood elf archer, knew about this as well. Otherwise, why would a long-range archer like her be so aggressive? Locke didn't choose to hide in the walled city. Instead, he went outside the walls. Beside him, there was a strange, 2-meter-tall, demonic mechanical marionette that was unusually active. It was also very destructive on the battlefield. Unlike other metal magic machines, this magic marionette didn't have a fully covered metal shell. Instead, it had a more primitive and crude clockwork mode. There weren't many areas of its body that were covered by metal plates, and most of its internal structure was exposed to the naked eye. It waddled crazily like a penguin as it wandered around the battlefield, transforming into various killing tools from time to time. If the enemy was far away, it would squeak and transform into a gnome tank that was emitting black smoke, using its powerful magical cannons to bombard the enemy from afar. Once the enemy rushed to the middle of the range, it would squeak and transform into a magic archer, using rapid ray guns to disrupt the enemy's pace. If the enemy continued to approach, it would transform into a 2-meter-tall clockwork gnome, using its chainsaw and claws to fight the enemy. From time to time, it would also fire gnome fire arrows, giving the enemy the fiercest blow. It was precisely because of the protection of this puppet that the goblin wizard Locke was able to dominate the battlefield. Above his head, an even more powerful floating disc was firmly guarding the nearby airspace. Any ferocious bird that came within 100 meters of Wizard Locke would be attacked by it. It had 2 main methods of attack. For long-range attacks, it relied on the ruby rays on the 2 sides of the disc, and for short-range attacks, it relied on the sharp blades that extended from the edges of the disc. When the disc charged through the flock of birds at a speed of 70 revolutions per second, no flesh and blood could withstand the terrible rotating, cutting force. Locke, on the other hand, held 2 blue freeze ray guns in his hands. He would shoot at any fish that slipped through the net. Although his marksmanship was terrible, with the help of Locke's Mark III combat goggles, every shot was still accurate. Any ferocious bird or beast that was hit by the blue freezing ray would instantly be frozen in a layer of half a centimeter thick ice crystal. Before they could break free from the ice crystal, the attacks of the magic puppets and the floating disc would come one after another and completely tear them apart. All the goblins guarding the wall were obviously loyal to Wizard Locke. Every time Locke showed off his skills and slaughtered a ferocious monster, they would shout and cheer him on from the wall. The dense burning rays also shot down most of the ferocious beasts that were rushing towards Wizard Locke. Compared to Locke, Magic Archer Sando's battle was unusually elegant and simple. She had the demeanor of a master of the arts. Magic Archer Sando fought alone on the battlefield. Her weapon was a strangely shaped and exaggerated blood-red longbow. As she leisurely moved through the battlefield, many beasts and monsters chased after her. Their fierce claws and terrifying fangs would always bite on her afterimage. She shuttled between the beasts and monsters, gently plucking the bowstring with her fingers and shooting a blood-red arrow through the enemy's skull. She would also swing the longbow and use the sharp blade on the back of the bow to gently cut the enemy's throat. Be it the enemy's claws, teeth, or blood, nothing could touch her slender and tall body. Sando wandered around the battlefield, seemingly slow but actually fast. She quickly and steadily killed the powerful monsters that were mixed in the crowd of ferocious beasts. If there were too many beasts gathered around her, she would suddenly step on the back of a beast and shoot up. She would draw her bow in mid-air and condense a blood-red, enchanted arrow on the bowstring. Then, she would shoot into the group of beasts. In the next second, a large-scale blood spell would suddenly explode in the crowd of beasts. Whether it was the blood impact, blood poison, or berserk mist, they could bring the greatest damage and chaos to the crowd of beasts. With her around, the powerful monsters could not even think about getting close to the wooden wall of the walled city. They could only sullenly die in the fierce beast tide. Compared to Locke's ferociousness and Sando's nimbleness, the Grade 1 human wizard was much inferior. He was a defector from the demonic forest hut. He was also an indispensable potion master for the development of his family. With Locke and Sando fighting in the front, Alder Leica, the potion master, could relax and fight freely under the wall. Alder Leica could relax and fight freely under the walled city wall. He knew what to do. He threw out a few small reagent bottles and enchanted little Locke and Sando with some enhancement spells in the colorful mist. He enchanted Sando mainly with agility and supplementary stamina recovery. He enchanted little Locke mainly with mental power enhancement and supplementary mental power recovery. In this way, the two's ability to fight continuously on the battlefield would be significantly improved. After completing the enchantment, Ade Leica threw out more than 10 potions in one breath. Leica threw out a dozen or so witchcraft potions in one breath. Amidst the exploding smoke, he summoned a 3-meter-tall elemental native, a wind spirit wrapped in a berserk cyclone, an ice warrior made of solid blue ice, as well as a ooze monster with a putrid stench. These elemental creatures were summoned by Ade Leica. Under Leica's command, they fearlessly rushed into the crowd of beasts and used their unique elemental abilities to fight them. And Ade Leica? Leica used a magic puppet crystal core to summon a Grade 1 advanced stone puppet to guard him. This way, his safety would no longer be a problem. Similar scenes continue to play out around the wooden stronghold built by the sorcerers. Apart from being bloody and cruel, the battlefield was also filled with a strange and peculiar feeling. Of course, war was always strange and unpredictable. Not all magi could do it so easily and leisurely. In some areas, there were some wizards and acolytes who were ambushed by monsters due to carelessness. They were killed by the beasts and became the losers on the battlefield. But on the whole, the rhythm of the war was firmly controlled by the Crimson Magi. The beast tide was like a surging wave. It could only batter against the seemingly fragile but indestructible defensive line over and over again, helplessly falling to the ground. The performance of the beast tide obviously did not satisfy the monster lords behind the scenes. Following a deafening roar, A Grade 2 intermediate scarlet flame tiger led more than 20 members of its family out of the nearby forest. They rushed past the beasts that were blocking their way and quickly rushed towards the stronghold walls. Scarlet flame tigers were a type of fire-type monster. Their fur was bright red, and when they ran, they looked like a flowing flame. Grade 1 scarlet flame tigers only grasped a special ability called Fireball. It could condense violent fire elements into a fist-sized fireball and shoot it out. It had a range of 30 meters and a power of 60 to 90 degrees. The Grade 2 scarlet flame tiger that was leading the charge this time had a strange ability similar to the Path of Burning. It could turn everything in its path into a sea of fire. If they were allowed to attack the stronghold, the wizards of the family outside would not be able to defend against the attack of the Grade 2 monsters. Locke and Sando were obviously unlucky. The place that the Grade 2 scarlet flame tiger chose to attack was the area that they were guarding. Sando's blood-red eyes flashed. Her red boots stepped on the backs of beasts, and she quickly approached the group of scarlet flame tigers. Sando's blood-red eyes flashed. Her red boots stepped on the backs of the beasts, and she quickly approached the group of scarlet flame tigers. A pair of blood-red bat wings appeared silently and carried her in the air at a rapid speed. On the other hand, she focused her mind and quickly condensed a devil infusion arrow on the bowstring. Judging the situation, this time she infused the magic arrow with berserk mist, hoping to disrupt the enemy's attack rhythm with chaos witchcraft. Unfortunately, when the mana infusion arrow turned into a blood-red lightning and flew towards the group of scarlet flame tigers, a shrill cry of an eagle came from the dense group of birds above. Immediately, a Grade 2 wind eagle swooped out from the crowd. Its two strong and sharp claws were extended forward and fiercely clawed at the top of Sando's head. Wind eagles were good at controlling wind elements, so their speed was the fastest among the middle-rank monsters. Sando was distracted for a moment and only noticed the existence of the scarlet flame tiger. She was caught off guard by the cunning Grade 2 wind eagle. Just as Sando was about to be injured by the claws of the Grade 2 wind eagle, a floating disc with a diameter of 1 meter and a thickness of half a meter swooped down with an ear-piercing whistle. The crazily rotating blade collided with the wind eagle's claws, which were wrapped in a layer of transparent air. Both sides were thrown back at the same time, and a spray of blood splattered across the sky. The wind eagle's right claw was cut open and blood splattered everywhere. On the other hand, the floating disc was thrown away by the violent impact. A huge dent appeared on the metal disc, and the edges were densely packed with cracks. Chapter 899. With the appearance of the rank 2 magical creatures, the situation on the battlefield immediately took a shocking turn. The previously invincible Crimson Sorcerers suffered a heavy blow. The defending sorcerers of several regions fell to the ambushes of the Tier 2 monsters, and there were even sporadic casualties among the Crimson Sorcerers. However, with their tacit cooperation and endless magic tools, most of the Crimson Sorcerers managed to escape the claws of the rank 2 magical creatures. They escaped back into the walled city with their bodies full of injuries and fright. In front of the tall tent in the center of the walled city, a few rank 2 sorcerers from the Crimson family looked at each other and nodded slightly. Then, they turned around and rushed into the battlefield. After all, testing the sorcerers of the family was just a test. If a large number of them died in the hands of the rank 2 magical creatures, it would not be worth it. Therefore, with the appearance of the rank 2 magical creatures, the rank 2 sorcerers of the Crimson family also joined the battle. Draconian Zacha was wearing an exquisite and perfect wind essence armor. With a lightning spear in his left hand and a frost hammer in his right, he roared and rushed out of the walled city, facing the combination of the rank 2 Scarlet Flame Tiger and the rank 2 Wind Eagle. Although they were both rank 2 and the opponent had the advantage in numbers, the strength of the two sides was obviously not on the same level. With Draconian Zacha's strong physique, even without these powerful magic tools, he would still be able to take down an opponent. Now that he was covered in the magic equipment of Ling Lang, why would he be afraid of two opponents of the same rank? Although the Scarlet Flame Tiger King was also a fierce and cruel creature, in terms of size, it was far from Draconian Zatcha's majestic and sturdy body. Therefore, with a roar, it opened its bloody mouth and shot a tiger roar bullet at the opponent. Then, it leaped and began to quickly circle around the Draconian, circling his back and launching a sneak attack. The tiger roar bullet, released by the Scarlet Flame Tiger King, was actually a variant of the flame bullet. Once it was shot, it turned into a scarlet fireball that smashed towards the Draconian's chest. Draconian Zatcha did not dodge. His tall body stood up, and a lightning spear in his left hand shot out a swift blue lightning, striking the fireball that was flying towards him. The violent lightning and the crimson fireball collided in midair, instantly exploding into a huge, dazzling fireball and a lightning storm that swept through the surroundings. Draconian Zatcha's wind spirit armor immediately shot out a whirlwind tornado that lingered around his body, forcefully blocking the drifting elemental storm. How could the unscathed Dragonman Zatcha allow the Crimson Flame Tiger King to attack him? He swayed his huge body and charged at the Crimson Flame Tiger King while withstanding the flames and lightning. The heavy footsteps left strange dragon claw-like footprints on the dark soil. Originally, Dragonman Zatcha wouldn't have been able to catch up to the Red Flame Tiger King with his speed, but he relied on the Wind Essence armor to increase his speed. His huge body turned into a blue afterimage as he tightly followed the Red Flame Tiger King. He charged left and right in the midst of the beast horde, crushing countless unlucky fellows to death. That rank 2 Wind Eagle kept circling in the sky. Once it discovered Dragonman Zatcha's weakness, it would let out a sharp eagle cry and transform into a greenish-white wind cone, swooping down from the sky. However, it was at a disadvantage because of the powerful wizard weapon in Dragonman Zatcha's hands. Whether it was the lightning spear or the frost hammer, its weak and thin body couldn't withstand either of them. It wouldn't be a problem for it to shoot some wind blades from afar, but once it got close to Dragonman Zatcha and got hit by the wizard weapon, its skin would be lacerated and its bones would be broken. After fighting with Dragonman Zatcha for only 5 rounds, the rank 2 Wind Eagle's claw was hit by a hammer. Not only was the wind wing technique that protected its body shattered into scattered air currents, even its front right claw was broken with a crack. The rank 2 Wind Eagle flapped its strong and dense wings with all its might, shaking off the power of frost that was spreading wantonly on its body. It barely managed to dodge the follow-up attacks of the lightning chain, and only then did it soar into the sky again with a shrill cry. While the Wind Eagle was entangled with Zatcha, the Crimson Flame Tiger King also transformed into a ball of flames and rushed to the side of the Dragonman. Both sides fought back and forth, and a soul-stirring close combat began 70 meters in front of the village wall. The Crimson Flame Tiger King was also a cruel and cunning creature. When it attacked, it intentionally avoided the sturdy armor on the upper half of its opponent's body and focused its attacks on the lower half of the Dragonman's body, which was in the shape of a centaur. The tiger's claws, which were wrapped in crimson flames, left charred claw marks on the huge and tough dragon scales. The flames it spat also burned the flesh and blood of the Dragonman's lower half, making sizzling sounds. Unfortunately, its attack had barely broken through the Dragonman's dragon scale armor, and its body was hit by a swift lightning chain. Sizzle, 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 a powerful paralyzing electric current surged around the Crimson Flame Tiger King's body, electrocuting all the hair on its body until it was charred black, and the shape of its bones and limbs were clearly visible. Before it could dispel the paralyzing effect brought by the powerful electric current, Dragonman Zatcha endured the sharp pain on his body and stood up on his own. He swung the heavy frost hammer in his hand and smashed it hard on the Crimson Flame Tiger King's skull. A dull thud sounded. It was accompanied by a crisp cracking sound. The Crimson Flame Tiger King let out a mournful roar, and its huge skull was split open. Before the purplish-black blood could spurt out, It was frozen into ice shards by the power of ice on the frost hammer. The Crimson Flame Tiger King was also frozen into a blue ice sculpture, maintaining its slightly bent posture. Without waiting for the other party to react, Dragon Man Zatch's second and third hammer smashed solidly on the Crimson Flame Tiger King's skull. A layer of ice was frozen, then smashed, and just as it was smashed, another layer was instantly frozen. The Crimson Flame Tiger King's anger was suppressed in its chest, and it couldn't even let out a roar before its skull was smashed into a pulp by the Berserk Dragonman's hammer 5 times in a row. It was like a watermelon that had been smashed into pieces, and it died a violent death. After killing the other party in one go, Dragon Man Zatcha used his lightning spear to pick up the Crimson Flame Tiger King's corpse and threw it into the walled city. Only then did he regain his vigor and started to observe the surrounding battlefield while gulping down healing potions. The skin and flesh on its lower body that had been scorched by the flames turned into charred ashes and fell to the ground. The bright red flesh that was exposed quickly coagulated and formed scabs. Then it was covered by the dragon scales that had grown back. If it was a fair fight, Dragon Man Zatcha, who had removed all of his wizard artifacts, would be on par with the Crimson Flame Tiger King in terms of strength. Although it could suppress the other party by relying on its strong physique, it would be difficult for it to defeat the other party. Not to mention torturing the other party to death in a crushing manner like he was doing now. One had 3 to 4 rank 2 wizard artifacts on him, while the other was naked and fought purely on instinct. The difference in strength between them was so great that it was impossible to look at it directly. Looking at the entire battlefield from afar, the rank 2 magi of the Crimson family relied on their valiant strength and powerful wizard artifacts to deal with multiple magical beasts of the same rank at the same time. This was especially so for the grade 2 magical machine warrior, the Goblin Ripper, which the Goblin Tygol was riding. It was practically an invincible killing machine. At the same time, 3 grade 2 magical machine creatures were attacking it from all sides, but they were unable to break through its sturdy metal shell. As for the Goblin Ripper, as long as the crazily spinning blade-like flywheels and terrifying chainsaws in its hands grazed their bodies, their skin would be lacerated and their flesh would be separated. Trying to fight the Goblin Ripper? F***CK. The barrage of bullets from the other party was enough to make the 3 magical beasts wish they were dead. It didn't matter if you were flying or not. Tygol didn't care at all. Once he locked onto your position, he would launch a large-scale barrage of bullets or a sky missile strike. Encountering such a sturdy lump of metal that couldn't be moved at close range, but could be easily destroyed from afar, the 3 magical beast lords finally experienced what it meant to be miserable and to be better off dead. They coiled around the Goblin Ripper, dodging left and right with all their might. However, under the ferocious barrage of bullets, their bodies were still riddled with bloody holes. If not for the ferocious nature of the magical beast supporting them, they would have long since turned tail and fled. As for the Blood Knights and Blood Elves, they were even more adept at killing on the battlefield. As long as the opposing magical beasts didn't have the ability to instantly kill them, they could rely on their lifesteal attacks to grind their opponents to death on the spot. In an instant, tens of thousands of magical beasts ran wildly on the battlefield, and bullets rained down. Amidst the black mass of magical beasts, a few grade 2 magi were also fighting fiercely without a care for their own safety. Wherever they passed, all magical beasts fled. All the magical beasts and magical beasts hid far away, not daring to get close to the battlefield where the grade 2 magi were fighting. The grade 2 magi fought fiercely, and the rest of the battlefield was handed over to the grade 1 magi and magical beasts. Both sides were exchanging blows under the walls of the stronghold, and the fight was extremely intense. At this moment, a strange roar came from the depths of the Black Forest. All the grade 2 magi on the battlefield stopped fighting and turned to look into the distance. There, a tyrannical aura surged into the sky, like an unstoppable gale that surged towards the battlefield. Grade 3. It was grade 3. There was no need to identify it carefully. The expressions of the Scarlet Magi changed, and for the first time, they lost confidence in winning this battle. Grade 3. There was even a Grade 3 magical beast lord behind the enemy. This terrifying reality caused everyone to turn pale with fright, and the high morale that they had accumulated from the previous battles crumbled in an instant. Under everyone's cautious and solemn gaze, a row of tall, ancient trees at the edge of the Black Forest in the distance broke in unison, revealing a daunting and terrifying monster behind it. It was a grayish-brown ball of flesh about 8 feet in diameter. The surface of its body was covered with a layer of uneven, metallic scales. In the middle of the ball of flesh was a bloody mouth that occupied almost half of its body. It opened its mouth, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. Above the mouth was a huge vertical eye that was not open. 7 to 8 snake-like tentacles extended from the sides of the ball of flesh like braids. And at the tip of each tentacle was a strange eyeball that blinked continuously. The skin of these eye stalks was tough but not rigid, and when they moved, there was a faint sound of wind breaking. Chapter 900. Eye devils were evil and twisted creatures. They had powerful mental abilities and were adept at using mental spells to control intelligent creatures to become their slaves. The many eye stalks on their bodies could shoot out magical rays of different attributes. Not only were they powerful, but they were also instantaneous. The strange meatball body of the eye devil had an anti-gravity field, so it could easily float in the air. The single eye in the middle of its meatball body could also shoot out a light of temptation that could instantly control the enemy's body. Thus, a powerful eye devil would often enslave hundreds or even thousands of slaves to create a safe nest for itself. It would become the ruler of this nest, controlling the life and death of every subordinate or slave. Seeing the Grade 3 eye devil appear, the few Grade 2 Crimson Magi immediately retreated into the walled city and started discussing nervously. If it was just a normal Grade 3 monster, they might be able to stop it if they worked together. However, against a terrifying Grade 3 eye devil, all the Crimson Magi lost their confidence in victory. Among all the Grade 2 Magi, Tygol's voice was the loudest. "Zacha, before we came, Meryl told us that you're the leader here. Tell me, how are we going to fight this battle? You won't be so stupid as to fight that Grade 3 eye devil with your Grade 2 body, will you? That's a Grade 3 eye devil we're talking about. I'm afraid you'll be bewitched the moment you get close to it and become its new slave." It was no wonder that the Goblin Tygol was so afraid of the eye devil. The Goblin race did not specialize in mental strength. Among all the Grade 2 Magi present, only the Goblin Tygol was a Grade 1 Magus who could use a magical machine to fight. Thus, he was terrified of the opponent's mental ability. Although the Goblin Ripper's physical defense was shockingly high, and its magic resistance was also very good, it could not defend against this kind of invisible mental ability. He and Dragonman Zacha were all brawn and did not have high mental resistance. Once they got close to the eye devil, they would be courting death. The opponent only needed to order them to commit suicide, and they would be killed without a drop of blood. When the eye devil slowly entered the battlefield with a terrifying aura, the atmosphere in the walled city became stagnant. The citizens and gnomes in the stronghold became restless. If the situation became critical, the sorcerers would have the means to escape from here. What would be left of them? A group of ordinary people and a group of sorcerer apprentices with insufficient strength, be able to resist the attack of the beast horde. Just when everyone's hearts were wavering and everyone was panicking, the Dragon Man Zacha's deep and powerful voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Zacha, help me locate him. I'm going to teleport over." It was Grim, Lord Patriarch. A hint of joy immediately appeared on Dragonman Zacha's broad, indigo-colored face. It roared and took a step forward. It pulled down a round metal plate from its neck and held it in its hand. It gathered the violent power of lightning and poured it into it. As the metal plate absorbed the lightning energy, It became brighter and brighter, almost instantly turning crimson and searing, sizzling the flesh on the Draconid's hands. Be that as it may, the Draconid did not toss it away. Instead, he clasped it tightly in his hand and held it before him. After a while, a mysterious light formation emerged from the metal plate and shook the void in its own way. Flame Teleportation Rune. The Grade 2 members of the Crimson family were not ignorant low-rank sorcerers. They instantly recognized the essence of this strange light formation, and when it appeared, it usually meant that, just as these thoughts appeared in everyone's minds, the light formation lit up the sky. A hazy, illusory figure appeared out of thin air and quickly solidified. It was the Lord Patriarch. Deafening cheers erupted from within the walled city. The beast horde outside the walled city suddenly stopped in their tracks, hesitating and fearful as they sensed a murderous aura rushing towards them. At the same time, the Tier 3 demon stopped in its tracks and stared at the figure that instilled unease in its heart. Flame Teleportation. This was a fire spell that Grimm had learned after advancing to Grade 3. Low-ranked Flame Leap could only be used within a visual range, and the furthest it could reach was 400 meters. Flame Teleportation, on the other hand, was much further. As long as a Flame Teleportation rune was set up within 200 miles, Grimm could use his powerful flames to teleport there. When Meryl chose Doffland Basin as the battlefield, she had already considered this point. Hence, Grimm, who had been guarding the White Tower, did not hesitate to teleport over the moment he received news of the situation at the front lines. He was not worried about meeting an opponent that was too strong. After all, the initiative in this war had always been in Meryl's hands. Meryl, who was bold and cautious, had already figured out the strength and distribution of the demon lords in the area before the beast horde broke out. The existence of this Grade 3 Devil was a surprise to the low-ranked sorcerers and commoners, but not to the higher-ups of the Crimson family. The main reason why Dragonman Zacha was chosen as the commander-in-chief of this battle was that he used to be Grimm's sole slave and had always been loyal and devoted to him. Hence, the flame teleportation rune used for positioning was entrusted to him, and it did not fail to live up to its expectations. It successfully led Grimm over. The flames in front of him finally dissipated. Grimm's field of vision was once again bright. A huge spiritual force instantly enveloped the entire Doffland Basin, allowing Grimm to instantly grasp the situation. As expected, his spiritual force clashed with Devil's sinister and cold spiritual force. Grimm raised his head, separated by a high wall, more than 3,000 meters, and countless strange beasts. His spiritual force collided with Devil's single eye. Crimson flames immediately rose from Grimm's huge body. However, the flames seemed to be wrapped in a layer of greenish-white evil will, causing him to shiver slightly. The surface of Devil's meatball floating in the air was inexplicably scorched. Numerous snake-like tentacles shot out colorful magic rays that struck Grimm's body, dispersing the strange magical flames. Grimm frowned slightly and increased the output of his fire energy. Only then did he use the high-temperature characteristic of the domain of combustion to completely dispel the evil will. Both sides had only clashed across the air, but they had already deeply understood each other's strength. Their expressions could not help but stiffen. If Grimm only had these tricks up his sleeves, it would be hard to predict who would emerge victorious in a fight to the death with Devil. However, Grimm had now consolidated his spiritual force and possessed several powerful trump cards. Why would he be afraid of a Tier 3 Devil? Under the admiring gazes of the crowd, Grimm laughed loudly and strode towards Devil. As he advanced, Grimm quickly armed himself. The burning Corona Magic Crown, the Flame Emblem Bracelet, the Fearless Belt, the Boots of Ash, and the pendant of Fire Dragon's breath released a surging flame aura at the same time. The flame aura merged with Grimm's soul aura, forming a vast and strange red barrier around his body. As Grimm advanced, the flame barrier quickly enveloped the many beasts and ferocious birds around the stronghold. After reaching Tier 3, the flame barrier had been upgraded to Domain of Combustion, and the magic damage it brought was astonishing. The moment the Domain of Combustion, which had a 500-meter radius, appeared, it brought a devastating disaster to the beast horde. Before all the wild beasts and vicious birds covered by the red barrier could even turn around and escape the range of the barrier, an incomparably violent flame energy gushed out of their facial features and pores, instantly burning them into a pile of charcoal. Ordinary beasts and ferocious birds did not have any magic resistance. They could not even withstand a flick of Grimm's finger before turning into ashes. On the other hand, the powerful monsters were only slightly better off, holding on for 3 to 5 seconds before dying in agony. Only the Tier 1 and Tier 2 monsters that were lucky enough to be at the edge of the Domain of Combustion managed to survive. Faced with such a terrifying human-shaped volcano, the beast horde that had been advancing bravely a moment ago instantly fell into chaos. They all fled for their lives, leaving the battlefield at the center of the valley to the 2 Tier 3 powerhouses. Adepts could not help but lash out at Grimm's terrifying aura. She could not help but feel frustrated as she whipped her snake-shaped eye stalk. Colorful magic barriers quickly appeared on her body. This powerful human sorcerer seemed to be an elemental sorcerer that specialized in fire. Such a sorcerer's fire spells might be powerful, but their bodies were far weaker than a Tier 3 monster's. Thus, deep in her heart, the Tier 3 Devil quickly prepared to engage in close combat with the human sorcerer. However, before she could carry out her plan, a strange change occurred to the human sorcerer. A strange puppet the size of a palm suddenly appeared on Grimm's shoulder. Its body was covered in strange magic runes, and a pale green aura of poison lingered around its body, making its petite body look extremely demonic. The appearance of the plague poison spirit also added another fire poison effect to Grimm's Domain of Combustion. That was not the end. Grimm waved his hand, and a 2-meter-tall, metallic elemental magic machine appeared in front of everyone. Everyone could see the iconic metallic shell of the elemental magic machine on its body, and they could also feel the strange elemental fluctuations of the elemental puppet. As Grimm placed a miniature version of the magic furnace into the body of the elemental magic equipment, its strength underwent an earth-shattering change. The elemental magic machine's sturdy chest seemed to have a miniature sun stuffed inside it, and it was currently spewing out scarlet flames and scorching heat waves. An incomparably violent wave of pure magic energy flowed out of the magic furnace, illuminating the elemental magic machine's entire body layer by layer. The magic iron alloy body that was already glowing with a faint blue luster began to heat up under the powerful magic energy, turning the elemental magic machine into a giant flaming man that no one dared to approach. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.